Welcome to the February 2nd, 2026 Select Board meeting. I'm Mark Howell. I'll ask Wendy to call the roll.
Okay, Mr. Bohm, everyone's here. Mr. Bohm,
Present.
Mr. McKennett,
Here.
Ms. Hartman,
Here.
Mr. Howell,
Here.
Ms. Ravelli's here. You have.
Great. We'll start as we always do with public comments. If anybody would like to make a public comment, please approach the microphone at the table. Begin with your name and your affiliation with Concord. Public comments are for 3 minutes, and today we're doing items that are not on the agenda as we usually do, and we'll allow comments as needed during the meeting for other items.
All right,
Yeah.
Eris Apollos, Conan Street. Since you all chose to adopt the IRA, an arguably childish decision, I figured that I should do a children's story time. So here we go. One fish, two fish, red fish, fascist. Let's get into this. One fish, two fish, red fish, fascist. Black fish, blue fish, old select board members, new fish. This one has a little star, this one has a carbon emission car. Say what a lot of fish there are. Yes, some are red and some are blue, some are old and some are new, and Israel tells them what to do. Lots are sad about the IRA, and some are glad about the IRA, and some are very, very mad. Why should they be sad and glad and mad? You should know, but if you don't, go ask your authoritarian bro. Some are thin and some are fat. This one has a yellow hat. From there to here, from here to there, fascism is everywhere. There you go.
Thank you. Anyone else? If you're on Zoom, you can raise your hand. Otherwise, we'll move on to the consent agenda.
Okay, it's a very brief consent agenda. No, I assume there's no comments, but I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as included in the agenda packet.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay. Great. Moving right along.
There we
All right.
I'm glad Carmen's here early. Okay, for the chair's report, I was just going to mention a couple of brief items. I did, along with one of the subcommittees of the Land Use Working Group, do a tour of several of the buildings at MCI that are specifically being looked at for possible reuse as DPW facilities. They are the loading dock, which is one of the buildings that's right up near the river outside the wall, the Industrial Arts Building, which was used largely for training of inmates for vocational purposes, and the intake building, which is a fairly large open space, all on the western side. It was a pretty interesting and useful opportunity to really get an idea of what some of these buildings that have high reuse potential might serve the town. We are also waiting responses for the RFP for master planning on the MCI site that we are expecting to receive proposals in mid-February, I think before our next meeting, the 19th, if I remember. And then there'll be an evaluation of that. We'll be putting together a small evaluation group, mainly with staff. I think later we'll get into this a little bit more, but we are past the expiration date of the charge of the advisory board, and we should discuss how we want to oversee the master planning activities, and I think we're generally calling that a steering committee. And I think after we've had a chance to look at the land use working group progress, map that out, we should start discussing how we want to put together that group and what their charge might be. And lastly, we are awaiting a draft of a memorandum of agreement with DCAM over next steps on the development process. So those are my quick updates on MCI.
I'm sorry, on that draft, we're waiting, this is our draft or their response?
They're starting the document, so
Okay.
we'll get a first look at it.
Got it.
Okay. It's based on the dialogue that we have had where we've responded, we've
Right.
put out some position points, so have they. We've responded to that, and then since they're familiar with what they like to see in a memorandum of agreement, I thought it might make sense to start with their version,
Yep.
and then we'll come back and look at that. I'm hoping to be able to bring that to our next meeting, but I don't have a firm date yet for when we're going to see that.
Was there any feedback after you sent that response back?
I think the areas that we've been talking about are the areas that they're also interested in, and there's still quite a bit of room for us to agree on some of the priorities, like access,
Yeah.
like wastewater treatment, would be some of the areas that we'll agree with. And I think that what we also want to do is outline how we are going to collaborate through this master plan process, so that at the end of the day, what we come up with in the master plan is a zoning package that DCAM is also willing to use to underlie their RFP process. So we want to work out how that collaboration is going to be as we work to select the vendor to do that.
Are those two kind of separate things?
Excuse me.
Like a letter that's sort of
MOU.
that memorandum of understanding,
Yeah.
and then separately how we're gonna
Right,
sort of work? They're not putting that all in one
right.
document,
Well,
or we don't know?
so we will coordinate over how they'll be involved in master. We're the lead on master
Yeah.
planning, and so that's our contract. And we're just going to understand how they would like to participate, and that
Yeah.
may or may not actually be a point in the document. It could just be,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's, we
Yeah.
should think about
Could
it
be
as there's two
separate,
streams
yeah.
of activity.
Right.
One is how we're gonna work together on the
Yeah.
master plan, the other is sort of the
MOU.
memorandum of sort of understanding
Mhm.
on the development.
right, yes, Mary.
Do you think we'll get clarity on the number of housing units that?
That's certainly one of the things that we've asked for, let's say, assistance getting, DCAM obviously is not setting the state's target for housing or what that housing looks like, but we're suggesting that we would like to collaborate with them in establishing what that goal is. So that is one of our main points that we're interested in, is what is the goal, so that we can decide whether that's a goal that we feel comfortable with, and exactly how we would attain that goal through our master planning process in conjunction with the land use process.
Okay, I'm a little bit confused because I thought we had asked them to give us a number,
We did.
and now you're saying that it's going to be done collaboratively? I mean,
Well,
what's
what
the
I'm
process
saying
that
is
you
that-
envision?
The housing goal doesn't come from
DCAM.
DCAM itself. It's
We're not gonna
it's
get-
more of a state goal from Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities
Okay,
and the Governor's Office.
Yep.
So we've asked for the state to get together and help
got it.
communicate what they think they
Good.
are looking for
Good.
to us.
Okay.
Yes.
Mark, back to the master plan for a minute. I know the scope, we reviewed the scope and the RFP is out. Had DCAM reviewed that? the
Yes.
Scope of work? Okay, so were there any changes? Are they happy?
What we did was we took a look at what they would have done, and then we added to it the things that we also need to incorporate the broader look at town-owned parcels and some other aspects of it that are unique to Concord. So our scope was really essentially a super scope of what they would have done anyway. And that's one of the advantages of having us run that process, is that we can look beyond just the MCI parcel at those implications for other town priorities.
And they were certainly okay with that?
Yes.
Yep, great.
Yeah, because they recognize that some of those things may come into play when we start talking about exactly how we're going to accomplish some of these goals. Transportation, of course, is the other one, is how we
Right.
how we work together to both secure good site access as well as town priorities around the Route 2 corridor in particular and the Rotary specifically. Okay, that's what I had in the chair's report, and we're going to delve into this more, I think, when we have our more detailed land use working group status discussion later. And also, we're going to touch on this in the goals, so we'll do that. If there's no other questions, we'll go to the town manager's report now.
Okay, thank you. I just have a few updates for you this evening. I wanted to announce that we are well underway with our 2025 annual report. About 90% of the reports have been submitted, so just a few reports remain outstanding. And this is a gentle reminder to anybody who is responsible for submitting a report to turn that in ASAP so that we can complete that report. This may have been announced last week, but I think it's worth a second mention if it was. Our 2024 annual town report won third place at the statewide competition. That is something that is administered through the Mass Municipal Association. I also believe I've mentioned to you that we are undergoing what we are calling a refresh for our Civic Plus website. Not a complete reformatting, but a refresh. So we're going through, working with the vendor to go through and standardize, make pages more uniform, make sure that links are working, making sure that colors are consistent. Over time, we have, the town of Concord is, everything has been in blue. Over time, we've kind of gone to maroon, and I think to match the schools, we're trying to go back to blue and adding green to signify sustainability, our commitment to sustainability. So that is something that we expect to launch later this spring, and I've seen bits and pieces of it, and it looks great, and I think people will really appreciate that. I wanted to mention that our new audit team is on site for the second week of a 2-week on-site stint here, and the fiscal 25 audit is well underway. Let's see. Our fiscal 27 budget and the 10-year CIP, those budget documents and the capital improvement plan documents will be available on or before February 20th. That is about 2 weeks prior to the first FinCom public hearing. Our upcoming annual pavement program is out to bid. Bids are due later this month. It is split into two. There is a north and a south project out to bid. The estimated budget on the north project is $6.05 million. On the south, it's $4.29 million. This is a 2-year initiative made possible by the support of the voters at town meeting last year and at the ballot, and we're hoping to have a very competitive procurement process. We are approaching the official closeout of the middle school building project. I know the school has been open for about a year now, but we are still working through closeout, and I have asked the chair for time on the agenda next month to review the project in total. We would like to have representation from the Middle School Building Committee come in, along with the superintendent and Gail Dowd, who has served as the town's internal project manager on that project, and kind of just walk everybody through that project in its entirety, including the budget. I'm not sure how well known it is, but that project came in substantially under budget, and I think it's important to be able to provide that accounting to the community and make sure that there is awareness around that. At that time, if the board is interested, we could also talk about the solar project. I know that's something that is
that would be helpful.
of interest, and Jason Bulger, our CMLP director, would be happy to come in and talk to the board about that project. On CMLP, we did have, I guess, our second meeting with a citizen group working through the issues of governance, and we have another meeting coming up later this month. And I think we're making some good progress there. Another item that I think that has been mentioned before, but worth another mention, is that our Commission on Disability received a grant from the state to conduct an ADA self-evaluation and transition plan, and this is geared toward access to programs. So a contract has been awarded to vendor KMA LLC, and there is a kickoff meeting next week. I think those are the items that I wanted to mention. I'm happy to answer any questions.
So Carrie, on the website, are we looking at kind of updating things that might be a little bit confusing or hard to find, or I'm just trying to get the scope of
Yeah. So
that.
there are two projects. The first is a refresh. That's what we're doing now. And the second, I'm not sure what we're calling. The second is more of a retooling. We are trying to fix in the refresh portion of it as many issues that we can find. But there is some clickology. We've internally, we talk about clickology. The website, there are some things that take kind of a ridiculous number of clicks to get through. Those things require more work than what we are doing right now. That is the second phase. So we're trying to make cosmetic adjustments and make sure that the website is as easy to use as possible without doing that deeper dive, which we will do next phase.
Got it, okay. And I just, in that, we might want to maybe get some folks, if we have volunteers or something to, no, because sometimes
Yeah,
people who use it every day
yes.
kind of go, oh, I go over here, and I go over
Yeah.
there, and I go over there, and then
Yeah.
somebody who's looking at it for the first time is like, I have absolutely
They have no clue,
idea
right, yeah,
what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just like suggesting maybe like we get some like citizen volunteers or something
Yeah.
to say, hey, go try to find this document, right?
Yeah.
Because that may be a different.
Yeah.
Yes.
People don't know how to navigate the
Yeah,
website
that's
at
what I'm
all.
just
Yep,
like,
exactly.
just to get
Yep.
some sort of user feedback.
Yeah.
We may be talking about the same thing, but the search engine, is really hard.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
inadequate.
Yeah.
You know, if you're looking for a document, it may be there at page 3. So the whole search engine, I've been looking for specific plans, specific town meetings. They're there, but the search engine doesn't help you find them. So maybe it all comes down to the search engine capability.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Any
It's a
other
big
questions?
task. No.
All right. So one of the main events this evening is the warrant order. So I'm going to welcome Town Moderator Carmen Reese. And I'll just briefly touch on one question that I think some people had seen early lists of what was on the warrant. And I believe last week I had even mentioned that there were 4 citizens petition.
Yep.
One of those citizens petition, upon review by the town clerk's office, didn't contain the proper number of signatures to be included in the warrant. So we're down to 3 for anyone who's looking for that last item. Welcome.
And I would note that that's a cautionary tale for folks who file citizens petitions, because there were 10 signatures on that petition, but one of them had something wrong with its voter registration or address or something, and so they did not, in the end, have 10. So it's always a good idea to have more than 10, just in case.
Just a question, Cora, if that petition come in before the deadline, would that have been reviewed and advice given back out to
Yes.
revise that?
Yes.
So the problem with that one kind of came in too late.
Right. It came in almost at the deadline, and then by the time the town clerk has had an opportunity to verify all the signatures on the petition, that, you're well past the deadline, and then there's nothing we can do about
So
it.
that's lesson number 2.
Yes, that is lesson number 2. Yes, do not wait till the last minute. That's lesson number 2.
Which I learned in 6th grade, too. No offense to the
And again.
petitioners in this case.
Yeah, well, I've had occasion to relearn that lesson a lot of times, I
Yeah.
have to say. So we have 51 articles. many of them will end up on the consent calendar. I can't tell you which ones at this point, because that will be determined as we go through the hearings and find out what is controversial, what is not, and the decisions will be made accordingly that way. And I'll be back to talk with you about what my first pass at the consent calendar is. So we have certain traditions. We have always tried to have all of the operating budgets for our 3 budget units on the first night of town meeting, and you can see that these articles are organized to do that. And I want to thank Shannon McAndrew for taking the laboring oar on this. And then we've kind of stuck with the capital articles for schools and town. We try to think about the biggest money issues being on the first night when we tend to have the greatest attendance. And we try hard to group, for example, the school articles on one night so that school personnel, they've got, our school administration has another town meeting that they have to go to and so on. So we try to limit the amount of time that they have to, that they must be at the meeting. We have put the zoning articles in the order that was requested by the town planner. There are at least a couple of them that need to go one before the other, and they wanted a little bit of space in between those just in case they needed to change the motion under the second one because the first one didn't pass. So those I would recommend to you that you leave as is because they're specifically requested to go in that order. You could move the whole block around if you wanted, but I wouldn't disturb that zoning block. We have all of the enterprise fund articles and the routine articles grouped at the end of the warrant. That's what we usually do with them. Typically, most of those will end up on the consent calendar, but we'll see what happens this year. We have 3 citizen petitions. We try to put those there's a lot of different ways to approach those. We've tried to intersperse them in the warrant kind of next to other things that are, in terms of subject matter or theme, consistent with them. And that also tends to mean that whatever town personnel should be around to address those will be around because there are nearby articles that are similar. So you'll see that the solar rooftop bylaw is right after municipal facilities planning and right before the zoning bylaw amendment. And you'll see that the Revolutionary War Monument article is right before the zoning bylaw amendments in case there are issues that the planning department might want to talk about there. And then we have a citizen petition. This one comes from a group of high school students of an age to vote. And they are the sponsors of the proposed composting ratepayer plan. They'd like to see that added to the town waste programs that are available. And so we put that right next to solid waste disposal, which is probably going to end up on the consent calendar, although maybe this year it will make sense not to have it on the consent calendar because we have this composting article to talk about, but we'll see what happens there. So happy to answer any questions. It's always a struggle because something has to go last and nobody wants to go last, and there you go.
So, Mark, I have two things I want to request.
Okay.
One is around, it's Article 22 is the middle school stabilization fund transfer. I'd like to see that moved up right above the capital stabilization, Article 15. So we'd be grouping the stabilization articles together, and there's a reason for that because there's some good education that we will be providing the public around use of the stabilization funds, and it's a great segue into the introduction of a new capital stabilization fund.
So
that's a
Wendy,
big
you would put that
So
then
put 22 above what is now 15.
above 15?
Yeah. This is something that the Financial Policy Work Group actually
Yeah,
discussed.
that makes sense.
Yeah,
So-
well, and that's up to you all. We put it with the school articles.
Yep, yeah, no, makes sense. And then the other thing that I'd like us to consider is that there's a couple adjustment articles in here. So Article 14, 20, and 21. I wonder if 14 ought to be grouped with 20 and 21. So 14 is that related to the free cash. It sounds like it's an adjustment that needs to be done, and 20 and 21 are also sort of adjustment-like financial articles that maybe those
Because
should be
that,
grouped.
because that deals with salary issues, with collective bargaining
No,
issues?
no, they're just sort of adjustments, as I understand it, and maybe Carrie, you can jump in here, I don't know all the history of these, but we've
Well,
spoken
14
about
and
some of them.
21 seem like they are.
They're prior year,
Prior year adjustments.
related to prior years.
Okay, so you'd like 14 then to go between 20 and 21?
Or before it, I don't know, Carrie, I don't have a preference, just group
Yeah,
them
I think that-
together in the interest of grouping.
I think it makes sense, what you just said, Carmen.
Is there any chance we would do them around Article 6?
That was my thought about that, is that those
Okay.
are essentially all budget adjustments in one way, shape, or form. So we could handle them alongside of the budget itself.
Yeah, because you do have number
Seeing a nod
6.
from the CFO.
Yeah. Yes, that's a yes. It makes sense to me.
Makes
I
sense
just
to
want them
Yeah,
grouped
that's fine.
together,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
all.
that's a good idea.
Even though
Judy.
that was my reaction to them, is that I had a couple of suggestions too. I guess I'll point out, just for anybody who's looking at this list, there is an article listed as number 23 on the list in the packet, which is fiscal year 27 Peabody Middle School upkeep. We're going to take a vote a little later to remove that one from
Okay.
the warrant. The reason for that is that funding has been included in the town's budget, as was really the expectation from last year, that Peabody's ongoing operations
Great.
cost was going to be absorbed into future years' budgets. So there was a point in the cycle where it looked like maybe that wasn't going to happen, and so this article was submitted, but it is no longer needed. So you should cross out 23. That
Okay,
won't
we
appear
can
on
delete
there.
that and renumber accordingly. And
Yeah.
then let me ask you, there are kind of, in terms of putting Article 6 with the other kind of adjustments to last year, we could move all of them up to where Article 6 is, or we could move Article 6 down to where the others are. And the only thing that I would suggest that we might think about is just making sure we get to all the school articles on their first night.
Right.
You could move them down, make sure the schools all go first. I mean, that's an option too.
We- Yeah, we usually do the town budget and then the school
Yeah.
budget.
Yeah, we do.
So I think I'd be inclined to move them up. I don't anticipate them being terribly lengthy. I think they're fairly straightforward. Each one is a singular transaction. So my preference would be to move them together.
Okay.
The second thing that I had noticed had to do with the adoption of the Conservation Fund bylaw article that the Select Board is sponsoring. And that has a direct relationship with an appropriation that I understand is going to be made by or recommended to be made by the Community Preservation
Right.
Committee.
39.
Right, 39.
39, so I would suggest that maybe we should do those together.
I agree.
I know we tend to do the Community Preservation Committee on the third night of town meeting, and so I'd be perfectly okay with having that.
So you're talking about 25?
25 and
And
39. Should
Yeah.
be- should
Right,
be-
the Conservation Fund bylaw.
That
I
first one
don't,
leads to the other one in a week.
25 has to go before.
Yeah, it has to
it
go
has to,
before.
it has to be
Right.
done before, and I think that, should it, I'm not sure about this, and but should that fail, there may be some adjustment in the
There will.
CPC's
Yeah.
There will.
There would have to be an amendment.
presentation.
That's right.
So that, dealing with those two together would make sense.
Mark, I agree with you, except I was wondering if we should move up 39 up to 25 as opposed to having them both follow the zoning, all of the zoning
Well,
articles.
that would be okay with me, too.
That would probably push the zoning articles to the third night of town meeting, unless we're lucky enough to be done in 2 this year. And I think there may be some things that people want to talk about on the list of zoning articles.
There will be.
So you're
They're
saying
also-
you want to, so you want to have them on the second night, or you want to have them on the third so people will
well-
show up?
I don't know. I would tend to put them on the second night, I guess, but it's really up to you, because if, you know, I don't have, until we go through the hearings, I don't have an inkling as to whether anything merits being specially scheduled. But
I think 25 and 39 will be higher interest this year than a typical CPC allocation. That's why I'm
Yeah.
advocating to
I
have
think
it
there'll be
sooner.
interest in some of the CPC articles.
yeah,
More than
Of course,
usual.
yeah.
okay.
So I'd like to have it.
All right, so then maybe we move the community preservation, what is now Article 39, up to follow Article 25?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Good, thank you.
And let's see,
So I
Yeah.
feel like 30 and 31, I don't know where to put them, but I feel like they may trigger a fair amount of discussion. So only just thinking about not having them at like the very end of,
Right, when everyone's exhausted, right.
yeah, or so- yeah. I'm
But
just-
it's hard to,
And I know it's hard to judge.
Yeah.
That was the only thing going through my mind is like, you have those two, one right after the other, both of which might end up with a lot of discussion.
and that's where Carmen might use her discretion to have those as special articles, depending on the public hearings,
So
right?
what relates to that is a question, when do we get to see what's in these citizens petitions? Because you're right, depending what's in those
Right,
petitions.
yeah, we
they
don't see
have
them, right.
More or less.
Yeah.
So we will have, what we try to do is to avoid having, to maintain version control of the warrant and not have more than one version floating around out there publicly. We try hard not to share the whole warrant with all of you, because then it becomes a public document until after we've had a chance to review it with town council. We'll have that meeting tomorrow
Right.
with town council, and so after that, once we do whatever edits town council recommends to us, and sometimes that takes us a couple of days, because
That's
we're going to
fine.
have to be
That's fine.
in touch with article sponsors and so forth
Yeah.
to make it happen. But by the end of the week,
Oh,
I
that's
think
great.
you should have it.
Great,
okay.
all right.
Yeah, the other one that seemed slightly, so the municipal facilities planning article, which is the one we've been talking about as the sort of carrier for funding for more MCI planning and facilities planning, strikes me as being closely related to the capital plan articles. And it's almost the investment portion of the budget. So to me, it seems a little bit orphaned where it is, but I haven't quite figured out.
So isn't it almost like part of our budget?
Yeah. I was inclined to group it with so probably if I had my druthers, I'd put it right near the capital improvement plan.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But we've already moved a lot of town budget things over there, which I recognize gets us on the edge of the school budgets being late on the
Right.
Right.
first night.
So you'd put that up to, you'd put Article 29 then to follow immediately after what is numbered now Article 8.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I think because that is closely related to what it's all about capital planning.
Well, one of the things that happens is when the presentations are related, sometimes they actually do go a little faster.
Mhm.
So,
There's
that'd be
benefit, right?
Mhm.
So after 8.
Okay. Does anybody else have any suggestions or observations?
Not me.
Overall, looks
Right.
like it'll be another interesting town meeting.
Absolutely.
So
All right, are we,
are we close
Carmen, you
enough on
comfortable
the-
with what we described, or do we need to recap?
well, let's, I've got a lot of arrows here, so I think, and I know that Shannon's got it. Okay, all right, Shannon is here.
Yeah,
and-
Carmen, I have everything.
Okay,
Great.
All
I
right,
did too, I just didn't know if we need to
Awesome.
recap.
Okay.
We get it presented back to us again at some point to,
No, this'll set the official order,
this will set the
Unless there's a
official order, because you guys are going to vote it.
right? We're about to.
Right now.
okay.
Yeah, so,
I didn't know if it was. you know,
yeah, so I'm looking for 2 votes, and we'll have Wendy read it back. But the first one will be simply to remove the article that's listed currently as number 23, the Peabody Middle School upkeep.
Okay, I'll start with that one. So I'm going to move to withdraw warrant article number 23, the fiscal year 2027 PBD Middle School upkeep article.
Second.
Any discussion or questions? And again, just for those of you that joined lately, that's already in the town's operating budget and therefore not needed.
Great.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Okay.
So then I move to approve the order of the 2026 annual town meeting warrant as presented, but with the edits as discussed during the meeting.
Second.
All right, do you want to,
Do you want me to recap them? I thought we didn't need to do that.
okay, all right.
Shannon's got it.
I think Shannon's got it.
And Shannon, we trust.
We do.
All
Yes,
right.
We do.
we do.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You asked for everyone.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, yeah.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and
Right.
the only other thing I'll note is we will again publish the warrant in the Bridge. Last year, we did it as a pull-out section.
Yeah.
This year, we're going to try and turn it the other way and do it as a booklet, which
Oh.
I hope will make it easier for people to
great.
pull it out and carry it around.
Great.
So we're all in a learning phase here about how this is going to work. So we're going to do that. And then we had a wonderful trip over to the middle school with a bunch of town staff to examine it as a potential venue for annual town meeting. And in a word, the building is absolutely perfect. The parking is unmanageable.
Yeah.
So we will be at the high school.
So Carmen, I have one more question. When would the warrant actually be published on the website? It goes to the Bridge, but that doesn't mean it's on the website.
The day that we send it to the Bridge, it will go
Okay,
on the
the 12th.
website.
It's the 12th.
And right now, that will be Thursday, February 12th.
Okay, great, thank
And
you.
if we're able to move that up, we will.
Okay,
All right.
great,
So
thank you.
that's 10 days from today.
Great.
All right, thank you.
Thank you,
Great.
Carmen.
Thank you.
So the next item on our agenda is a discussion about it's about a regional dispatch center and the process to begin planning or potentially planning for entering into a regional agreement. And in order to gain access to some grant money, in order to do that, there's a letter of attestation that we would need to authorize the town manager to sign. So in anticipation of that, we're going to hear a presentation about the concept, and then the letter's relatively straightforward. But
Okay, thank you.
Gary.
Thank you, Mark. I am going to rename this Shared Emergency Communication Services. I know we're saying regional dispatch, but think Shared Emergency Communication Services. I'm joined this evening by our two chiefs, Chief Tom Mulcahy, Police Chief, and Fire Chief Brian Whitney, along with our Emergency Communications Manager, Stephen Johnson. And I think Stephen is going to lead the presentation. There is a presentation in the packet that is lengthier than the one that we are going to go through with you this evening. I think what we're going to go through this evening is about half of the slides that are included in the packet. But Stephen, who I believe you met Stephen last month at our budget discussion, and the two chiefs, if you want to come up or come to the front row, that would be great as well. All right. Thank you, Stephen.
Well, the chiefs get settled here. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I think the reason for this presentation is to say why now. What are the benefits? What are the things that we're considering? Why are we even having this conversation? And so the slides that we've prepared for this evening kind of go over the why now, the factors that are leading us to have this conversation, and next steps. And then, of course, I'll answer any questions that you would have. So if we can, I don't know who's moving the slides forward, but if we can, there, awesome, thank you. I'll look over, is that one in there? Okay, great. So why now? The landscape of 911 in Massachusetts is changing. State 911, State Department has recently contracted with Mission Critical Partners. They're a public safety consulting firm, and they are conducting a study on the state's regionalization efforts to date, including regionalization recommendations moving forward. And as the state continues to highly incentivize regionalization and is evaluating it with its consulting partner to say, hey, what does the future of 911 look like? Are our regionals doing what they're supposed to be doing? And municipalities who haven't yet regionalized, why haven't they regionalized? What are potential partners for them in regionalization? And what does the landscape look like in 10, 15, 20 years in 911? Just trying to give you some figures. In 2008, there were 264. They're called PSAPs, Public Safety Answering Points. Those are the 911 centers that exist in the town. 264 in the Commonwealth. That was in 2008. 2022, 212. And just at the beginning of this year now, we are at 194. You can look at not just regionalization is increasing, but the rate of regionalization, even in the past few years, is increasing. And so we're looking kind of at where is the future of 911 heading in the Commonwealth? And Concord is not immune to the challenges that PSAPs face across the Commonwealth and across the country, really, with staffing shortages, burnout. Average turnover for a dispatcher nationally is 3 years. There's 74% of centers in the country report vacancies in their centers. It's tough to do the 911 business. And so we recognize that as a reality, too. And there's also an increase in expectation of our communication centers. The public demand does not decrease, even though the staffing challenges increase. And so we have rising costs of infrastructure and technology. And so we kind of looked at this and said, hey, how can we get ahead of this a little bit and look towards the future? And regionalization is a conversation that has come up. And there's a lot of incentivization financially from State 911 to provide us with funds to partner, share services across municipalities that can ease the burden of the municipalities encounter. Go to the next slide here.
So how many regionalization centers are there now?
I don't know the exact number because it's ever evolving. I believe we're in the upper 20s. That's a very rough estimate, and I'd have to get back to you on that. But it's growing.
But it's also, I'm speculating a little bit, but from what I know in some other work, like in other states, county is a much bigger thing. Like town isn't really the thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And so you have a little bit, I don't know if it's unique, but it's certainly unusual, the state of Massachusetts, where
Yes.
things tend to operate more at the town level.
Yes.
So it's not unusual when you look across the country
No,
to
it's not.
see these things operating at more of a county level.
I would say you're 100% accurate. And New England is very unique, particularly Massachusetts and Connecticut, who tend to have a higher number of PSAPs. And the rest of the country is not a stranger to this at all.
Point being, this isn't a sort of like never-before-seen type of
No,
model.
no,
It's
no.
actually a pretty
There's
common
nothing
model.
novel about this. Yeah. And this is currently a current map of regionalization in the state. And so, of course, it's zoomed out. It's publicly available on the State 911's website. But the next slide is a zoom in of our region, just to kind of give us a picture of where things are heading. So we can advance one. And you can see Concord there, kind of sort of in the center of the map, obviously. And then we're surrounded by many regional centers. And you'll notice that each color, if it's a slash color, like a stripe, that means that they are pending joining a regional, or if it's a solid color, it means they've already existed within the regional. And so a lot of the municipalities to the right, particularly when you get to Cambridge, Boston, some larger cities, shared services is going to be they're going to be much later adopters of that. And so then you've got communities to the north, kind of to the west of us, where where we're looking at potential partners, right? Because if you kind of take away a good portion of the possibilities to the east, you start to see the options for us in 10, 15, 20, 25 years narrowing. Because you can see that if these regional centers around us kind of expand, and as they acquire or absorb new communities, then hey, if we want to remain kind of at the steering wheel of this a little bit for our own municipality, how are we going to do that when the options narrow? And so that's part of the reason why we're having this conversation now. I thought that map would be helpful to see kind of where we're headed in the Commonwealth. And even in our conversations with State 911, they're going to continue to incentivize regionalization, so much so that it may even become more challenging to operate as an independent public safety answering point.
To your point on counties, it's interesting to see a Middlesex overlay on this.
Yeah, you got something
interesting.
Middlesex, yeah, right.
And it's interesting because even some of and the chiefs can talk about this too. I mean, our NEMLEC, Northeastern Law Enforcement, blanking on the abbreviation here, but our pacts with there's so many abbreviations to remember, but our law enforcement partnerships and our fire partnerships, fire districts, even those aren't always county-based. It's a lot of models and shared services, and so dispatch is very similar in that regard. So the next slide, there's two different models that State 911 has adopted for shared services for regionalization. The first is a hosted model, and essentially at a high level, hosted model is when there's a host agency, and that host agency absorbs, say, the services for 911 services for whatever partners exist. So the public safety telecommunicators in that emergency communications center are employees of the host agency. The human resources provides the services. They're on payroll. It's a town department being served by town services, as opposed to a district model where each of the municipalities comes together, forms an agreement to form a district, and then many of the services are contracted out. There's governance models that allow for operational input, and of course there's a board of directors, but it's an independent governmental entity as opposed to being hosted by a municipality. We're looking to a hosted model and to be the place where we could partner with communities and share services and have Concord be the hub of those efforts.
To form a hosted model, is the process simpler than a district model?
I don't know if it's simpler, if it's just different. It's just
Legally, it must be different.
Legally, it's as
it's different.
A district would be an independent governmental agency.
Right.
So what are the benefits of being hosted versus having a district and independent?
I can answer just a little bit, and then I could defer to Carrie, who I think has had some experience here as well. I think for ease, one, for the preservation of the local flavor that we are looking for, to kind of have Concord it a little bit more I'm using the steering wheel, kind of captain the ship, if you will. So we retain a little bit more local control. We also, our staff who have been here and they're tenured here can have the security of knowing that they continue to serve with us. As far as the operations, things kind of would look very similarly between district and regional, but it has a lot to do with governance. Carrie, maybe I can defer to you a little bit here.
I guess I see it as a two-step process. I think we have some existing capacity that we can contract out with some neighboring communities on a much shorter timetable. And I think long-term, the region or the district is what makes sense. It's just going to take longer to have that happen.
Yeah, I kind of think of it as if you were going to do one other town. at the start. You
Yes.
started with a
Right.
hosted model. If it becomes something
Yeah.
where it's like,
Yeah.
oh, you get it to a scale, if you got to a
Right,
place where it's like,
right.
hey, we're going to have 5 or 6 towns do this all together, you could say, oh, now it makes sense to actually do it at more of sort of a
Yeah.
district level, but may
And
not
we'd-
be.
We'd benefit from a revenue perspective, being the lead
We would.
initially. Yep.
We would, and then grant opportunities. I don't think E911 necessarily favors hosted versus district when they give out grants. It's just, if there's more than one of you working on this, you're eligible for grants.
Right.
Yeah.
And in my conversations with State 911, it's what makes sense for public safety. That's their chief consideration. And so to Carrie's point, it's not going to hosted versus district with these grants. It's really what is most efficient and it best serves public safety.
So what are the benefits for the partners on here? I hear the benefits for us, but what's the quote-unquote selling point, the benefits?
I think the presentation may answer some of that as we move
Okay.
along.
Yeah,
That's-
why don't we do
No, that's okay.
ahead.
Yeah.
And then if you feel it's unanswered, I can cover it a little bit.
Good, wait.
Moving on to some of these benefits, we're looking, first we'll talk about staffing benefits, the next slide. One of the most consistent benefits for regional centers relates to staffing. There's increased dedicated staffing for 911 communications, business line call handling. That's actually a very high call volume considered if you do a 911 call volume to a business line, the routine 7-digit number that folks call. We get a lot of that routine 7-digit business line phone calls, but those are equally as important to us, and we want to make sure those are serviced well. And public safety dispatching. When you have a limited staff in a center, there's a lot of job splitting that goes on. You can imagine a 911 call for a medical, someone's answering that phone call. They may simultaneously be dispatching fire and police to the call while they're attempting to monitor radio communications, while they're giving emergency medical instructions on the telephone. It's a high demand, and having more staff in a center, which shared services often allows because of the grant opportunities and the increased in staffing, we can better serve the public. There's reduction in overtime. Forced overtime is always a consideration for dispatch centers. When someone is not in that seat, somebody has to be there. We don't run short. We don't, have a staffing level where we don't fill. So everyone has to be there, and whether or not they volunteer for that. And with that, having increased staffing reduces the workforce burnout and increases wellness overall. Stronger supervision, improved recruitment and retention. There's career pathways for staff, and then training is streamlined. You can imagine, I've kind of given this analogy in my talks with the chiefs. If you were to call 911 in any community in the Commonwealth and ask, say my house is on fire, God forbid, there might be maybe different types of fire departments, but they're all going to get water on fire, right? They're going to get wet stuff on the hot stuff, right? These very similar operations. The laws are enforced similarly, across the state as far as the laws that are enforced in Concord, barring town ordinances, or the laws that are enforced across the state. In 911, you call 911 in one community, it varies very much the services you'll receive from the next community. And so when you have shared services, there is a reduction in the discrepancy or difference you see across across partnering agencies. So if a Concord resident's just over the line in a neighboring jurisdiction that we would serve, they would have the same quality of service that they would in the town of Concord, and that's a benefit to potential partners as well. There's operational benefits, standardization in standard operating procedures, reduction in transfer times. Currently, if you call 911, you're on the town line, perhaps you reach another municipality, they're going to say, hold on, we're going to transfer you to Concord. Shared services reduces the likelihood of those transfers, which improves our call processing time. It's improved incident management. We all maintain a greater operational picture. You can imagine when anything's happening across municipalities, across jurisdictions, we're on the phone, we're coordinating with folks. There's a lot of situational awareness and information sharing that goes on that's streamlined and much more efficient in a shared services model. And what's also critical is redundancy. 911 centers can often be a single point of failure. Many municipalities don't have the luxury of affording, say, a backup 911 center or redundant technology, because oftentimes the redundant technology is just as costly as your primary technology. And being in a shared services or a regional model, one grants access to funds that can help with redundancy, and two, those funds could be used for primary models, offering the towns an opportunity to invest in secondary resources. Imagine a 911 center that goes down, there's a backup center in another jurisdiction ready to go. It doesn't create a crisis, it's just an opportunity to test your resiliency. And shared infrastructure, of course, is a benefit. Moving on to some financial benefits, you can imagine as I'm kind of sharing the operational, how that easily pours over into the financial. The regional models allow communities to share costs across major systems, our primary computer systems, radio infrastructure, facilities, redundancy, and this allows for more stable long-term budget projections, reduced duplication, lower exposure to costly failures, and efficiencies across the board. And then there's strategic benefits as well, long-term sustainability, a healthier financial picture. We have a stronger position with state 911 and within the region because shared services means we represent more citizens, more call volume, and that puts us in a position for increased funding. This allows 911 to be what it truly is, a profession. Part of the issue with retention of public safety dispatchers is once they get to their centers, particularly in smaller communities, they have reached their career ceiling. On the day that they start. And that does not allow for great retention. And shared services is a way that 911 allows there to be a career pathway for specialized roles, supervision roles. There's opportunities for a service in specialized teams and so on and so forth. While these might be felt needs, they do matter to our telecommunicators who have dedicated their lives to the work. And risk management and resilience, of course, I've talked about that a little bit already with the redundancy. And all of this enhances public trust and public safety, knowing that you've got a team of public safety telecommunicators at your disposal anytime as a firefighter, as a police officer, as a citizen who needs help in the middle of an emergency, in a storm when plows are out. The DPW can get on the horn and give us a call, and we have someone available to them if they run into an issue. If there's an emergency with a utility company, we're the ones that often will hear about those and process that. There's a lot of work that goes on in an emergency communications center, and the more resources, the better. So what is available to us? The State 911 Development Grant exists. This grant provides funding for professional services, project management services, transition expenses once a regional center is approved, everything, architectural services, engineering services, construction costs, building costs, leasing costs. There's a lot of different avenues that State 911 provides funding. And of course, the partner agencies and the host municipality would have to figure out what is the most appropriate use of funding and how do we apply for it, or what should we apply for. But once we are positioned as a potential regional partner, that becomes an avenue to really, provide even higher quality services to the town, but two, be able to free up even some of the resources that we're already spending on that infrastructure to enhance services. So where are we now in this process? Well, we're considering the next step. The next step is to explore potential partners in our community. Essentially, what happens is once you have a community that's interested, the communities write what's called a letter of attestation that essentially says, hey, we're interested in having exploratory talks about this, potentially even leading to what would be a feasibility study. It allows those communities to go before State 911 to say, hey, we are interested in working together on this. We'd like to apply for some funding to do some feasibility studies, some research to see if this is a good long-term fit. Does State 911 think it's a fit? Does the community think it's a fit? And do partners think it's a fit? And so we're at that point in time where we're considering letters of attestation and then looking at a feasibility study with potential partners. And that would include some site visits, some State 911 consultation, and engaging our public safety leadership with our potential partners as well. And so, Carrie, I can defer to you and where we go from here with the letter of attestation part of this.
Yeah, so our initial outreach was to 3 of our neighboring communities. 2 of them got back to us fairly quickly, and last week the team met with those 2 communities at an administrative level. One of the communities is ready to move forward and can be named as the town of Lincoln. The other community is considering and not yet ready to go on record, but maybe even later this month, there'll be an update there. But the town of Lincoln and the Lincoln Town Administrator has already been given the authority by his board to enter into this agreement. They are very willing. They were looking at, do you remember which regional opportunity? Was it Holbrook?
It was,
Yeah, so they, as a smaller community, it's difficult to be able to provide these services. You know, this is a costly endeavor. Most smaller communities are only going to have one dispatcher on that can be precarious at times. So they are ready to move. The grant cycle is not until April 1st, is
yeah,
that?
so State 911 has not released their grant guidelines for fiscal year '27 yet. So once those grant guidelines are released, then we have the development grant, a somewhat narrow window to apply for that grant. So I don't even know the deadline yet because it has not been published. We're foreseeing it's going to be late March, early April, where we would apply for, with the letters of attestation, funding for a feasibility study would be the fiscal year '27 plan. And then, sorry, go ahead, Carrie.
No, I was just going to say, so I know this is the first time we've talked about this publicly. You should feel no pressure to authorize any letter tonight, but within the next meeting or so, if we want to be able to submit a grant, we do need to have that authorization from the board. And at some point, I think I'd just like to talk about the regional effort previously, whenever that feels appropriate.
Mary, you have a question?
Yeah, I have two questions. Thank you, Stephen. I like your knowledge and your enthusiasm,
Yeah,
so
thank you.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for that. I have two questions. I read something about Next Generation 911,
Sure.
which replaces the analog with something that enables like text translations for people who don't speak English,
Yep.
video calls, more accurate GPS location. Is that part of this? Will some of the grants enable that type of technology for us?
So Massachusetts is interesting, going back to Cameron's earlier point about how things are done throughout the country, where Massachusetts controls all of the 911 infrastructure. So a municipality can't say independently have a service that's not offered to the rest of the state. So the state 911 would, while we are Next Gen 911 already in the state to some degree, not all of the features of Next Gen 911 are currently active. For instance, text to 911 is something that's happening in live. You could do that in the town today, but there may be multimedia messaging in the future, video calling, FaceTiming 911, which you can imagine would entirely change the industry.
Right.
But that is going to be controlled by the state, and if that's done for any PSAP, it's going to be done for all of the PSAPs.
Thank you.
But
My
the
second,
cost of
It's a
it-
great question.
Sorry, Mary, but the cost of it could still be spread if
So-
you're doing it in conjunction with
it's
other
still,
towns.
yes.
So what Stephen is trying to say is the state
Drives.
provides a 911 service now, which is the technology platform, and all of the PSAPs, whether they're a regional or a town PSAP, are actually using the state system. What's very expensive and challenging about it is that small operations, Concord is one of them, usually one or two dispatchers, are just almost as expensive as
Yeah,
rooms
that's
full
what
of
I'm saying. Right. Yeah,
dispatchers
that's what I'm saying.
to organize. And so the state is incented to cut down on the number of,
Yes.
Yeah.
of clients that they have using that. And that's one of the reasons why they're so supportive. And they're also to some extent limited by the amount of investment that the local municipality is able to make in the facility themselves in order to use the services, because there is quite a bit of local flavor in this.
Yeah, that's all accurate. Thank you, Mark.
I have another question.
Yes.
Thanks. I still have the floor. I know that when you were here before, we talked about this, but you know we're looking actively at replacing our public safety facilities, right?
Yes.
So I just want to, again, hear that you are working closely to understand what's the footprint you need to provide this service, and if that's included in the plans of the subcommittee and the group that's looking at
Yeah, and I can say that that has been happening.
Great.
Yes.
I just wanted, okay.
Paul?
In discussions with these other towns right now, is the discussion do you want to enter into a regional agreement, or is it a discussion that plus Concord as a host? You answered my question on benefits to any town.
Right.
But the benefits of other towns have Concord as that center. I mean, one of them is they're too small. And
The offer has been, are you interested in talking with Concord about hosted services?
okay, so it's explicit. Start. And so we're looking at the right size community who probably wouldn't compete for that position.
Right. Right now, we're looking at communities where we feel they're a good match, not just in terms of call volume with what we have to offer, but maybe culture and, communities that we work together with regularly.
And we've had previous discussions with
Yeah,
at least one other community. Why did those not proceed?
Yeah, so probably just before the pandemic, the town, the select board signed, I'm not sure, I'm actually not sure of the timing. So it was before the pandemic, the town of Concord and the town of Acton went through this process, signed letters of attestation, hired a consultant to do a feasibility study to form a regional dispatch center between the two communities. The select board in both communities entered into intergovernmental agreements to stand up that regional dispatch. And then we engaged in a process to make that happen, which was not successful for many reasons. Probably, I would say that the two main reasons were, I don't think the community understood that this was going to happen. I don't think that the community understood the process, that we were not, when I became involved in it, we were not discussing the feasibility. We were trying to stand up a center. And I think there were some steps missed in bringing the community along and maybe even the select board. And I think that the second issue really was, even though it was intended to be a district, it really felt from our perspective that it was a hosted service hosted by the town of Acton. The site selected was inside of the Acton Police Department. There was a lot of infrastructure that was going to solely benefit Acton, and it was not, it was not successful.
And I think the interest in the state of having these centers has increased since that time, pre-COVID time. So there's just more momentum behind this effort.
Yeah.
And as you said, this is just the first phase is a feasibility
Right.
study,
Yes.
right? So,
There's,
Didn't work.
the regionalization of 911 centers has been on the table for quite a long time, actually. I can remember attending an MMA presentation in Westford about this in around 2008 or 2009. And it actually fairly closely follows the regionalization of call centers that's been going on in the IT industry for decades now. And it's important to recognize when you consider this, it is a numbers game. There is a fairly well understood size that needs to be attained to get the efficiencies, to be able to run full shifts, to be able to have the benefits of backups, to be able to flex resources when you need it into emergencies. And one of the issues, I would say, about the previous proposal was that it looked like it was going to be Concord and Acton, and I will say that Concord and Acton together do not add up to enough regionalization to create the levels of efficiencies that Stephen is quite rightly pointing us at. And so while I'm very supportive of the concept and I think it needs to be done, I also think it's important that if we started with other small communities that are just like Concord, we would have to recognize that we are starting out on a multi-step process to eventually get to the size of a center that is good enough to, or big enough to be actually a benefit, not just the size of a town that's, twice the size of our town, which still has those same challenges. So, I don't know what that ends up being, but you can imagine today in Concord, I would imagine on second and third shift, we often are staffed by one dispatcher, maybe two at most.
Right now, it's 2 days, 2 evenings, 1 on overnights. We
Yeah.
have some supplemental staffing to address some of that, but yes.
So if we doubled, we might not even need to add that, because at times the call volume is extremely low. And so you need to really expand the service area. So, look at the map, look at the sizes of the communities, and think that I'm looking back at what's page 10 in the packet, and thinking that whole white area, of which Concord, Carlisle, Bedford, Acton, Littleton, Westford, Chelmsford, Billerica, all part of it, that, to my eye, looks like one center. And then the question is, when that proposal comes forward, where's the facility that's big enough to do that, or what is the plan to grow into that? So what I'm trying to say is I'm very supportive of the idea, but I also think that we need to think several steps down the road so that we're not, in a very expensive way, picking up small communities and still not attaining the size necessary to actually achieve some of these benefits.
So,
But Mark, to that point, it's a very important point. So what you're saying is there's a critical mass,
Yes.
right.
even to do a feasibility study, because you don't want to have two towns and have
Well, that's what I was,
a critical mass of willing partners.
does the feasibility study get to that economy of scale where it's really going to work
which
for us?
is-
That's what I'm trying to understand.
Tell us what that.
The feasibility
yeah.
study's got to say, is this going to
Yeah. So I
viable long-term, right,
okay.
at that size? And I don't know if it
I
does.
think if I
That's
can
the
just kind of
question.
weigh in here for just a moment. State 911 is evaluating that currently, so that's why they've contracted with a consultant to do exactly the analysis that you're discussing. We would, by the way, one of those consultants, that same consultant actually may be one that the state says, hey, use them as your consultant. So that is an option. They're going to have all that background and knowledge and include that in the feasibility study. And on the other hand, too, there's got to be a slow, methodical way at which you approach shared services, because there have been regionalization efforts that have occurred rapidly. And while the merger occurred rapidly, the staff retention, the success, and the morale did not
manage
follow
it.
through. And so it's not, while efficiencies of scale are critically important, you need to have the personnel in place to operate those efficiencies. And they need to be pleased to be there. And the standard operating procedures need to align with all of that. Mark, your point is well taken. I agree with you. And I think that's why the conversations we're having is, okay, what's a 10-year model look like? What's a 15? What's a 20-year model? What's the state looking like? And how do we begin to walk before we run?
Right. I agree with you that those issues are really important, and I would submit that one of the challenges that occurred in the last attempt that Concord had at this was that it didn't seem like some of those longer-term planning was taking place in a collaborative model across the partners. And that's really the key, is that even if, if Concord decided that we wanted to host such a model, we need to be prepared for the idea that we're taking on partners who need to also be very willing in order for it to be successful. And there needs to be a pretty good long-term strategy for how that grows to meet that target scale to be really efficient and really successful. And as long as that's part of the feasibility assessment, then I'm all for it.
And I anticipate it would be, yes.
Good, good.
Well, we have to remember that before that Acton thing, we discussed it, even, I remember watching the select board discuss it before we were talking about regionalizing with Acton, and some people were concerned about having, making a call and not having someone who's familiar with our locality.
Sure.
So, and you mentioned this earlier, you want people to feel like this is still their dispatch center.
Yep.
So yes, you're right, we want the economies of scale without losing that feeling that people have that this is our public safety.
That's right. And as the industry evolves, we're training personnel to, it's very rare to have folks who live in the communities in which they work now.
Right, right.
And years ago, that was how it was. And when I started in 911,
Yep.
I was an outcast because I worked in a community where I didn't live. And how could you know? And what would you do? But you develop a love for the community you serve. You learn what's important to the citizens you serve. And if you've got the right folks in the right positions, they do the best job.
Yeah, and they have more tools.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, we do. Okay,
So,
Thank
so
you.
Carrie, you said you were not in a rush to get authorization to move forward, but I feel
I don't-
comfortable.
Yeah, I don't want the board to feel rushed, because I
No.
recognize
Right.
this is the
Fully
first.
supportive.
Me too.
Yeah.
So I
I don't feel
personally,
rushed.
Yep.
I don't feel rushed, I feel fine personally. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
same.
not, I'm not speaking for the rest of the
Yep.
select board. But in terms of just that attestation, the only other question I would ask is, what other progress can, so there's this whole like, hey, we're gonna go get some money from the state, what else can we be doing?
So what we're doing now internally is if the-
To like keep it going
Yeah.
as fast as we can.
Sure. I would say one thing that, in addition to the external things with the state, right, we have to go through that process.
Yeah.
But internally, we're preparing ourselves for that reality. So if that is realized, then updating standard operating procedures, updating emergency medical dispatch protocols, updating quality assurance and quality improvement procedures. One that's my role anyway, that's why I'm here, it's what I'm doing, that's the bread and butter of my job, but also it prepares us for a regionalization effort. And so that way, when we look at a hosted model, communities come in with a well-structured program, as opposed to what often becomes an issue is where you're trying to start things from scratch and trying to, okay, well, you've had your SOPs and your SOPs, we have a model that works in collaboration.
Or maybe even with Lincoln or others, if they're interested.
Well, I think
It's like,
that's-
what sort of data are we gonna need? Maybe
Sure.
getting them thinking about the data collection,
Yep.
all that stuff.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Paul.
No, I think those steps are really important to convince potential partners that Concord would be a good host, because we're steps ahead in the process. So I think those are very
Yeah.
prudent steps, yeah.
In the MMA presentation that I recall, one of the key things was staff retention. In other words, the process of regionalizing, if it retains the staff from those communities that are contributing into it, you tend to have a better outcome, because they're bringing that knowledge with them, and there's an opportunity to integrate and become a shared culture. And so I think that it's critically important that that expectation be set, that is going to be the priority. And they had a variety of strategies that we don't need to go into now to try to accomplish that. But there's, you will be assimilated is probably not the right way to start.
Yeah, well, of course.
All about management and leadership, right?
Science
And,
fiction
right.
movie.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm sensing everyone is comfortable with moving forward at this point with this. So let me make a motion to approve the letter of attestation that was included in the package for the Regional Dispatch Center.
Second.
Any further questions or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Stephen.
All right,
Really
thank you
great
very much.
presentation,
Pleasure.
and good luck.
Thanks,
Yeah.
thank you. Good to see you all.
It's a great opportunity.
See you.
Yes. Okay,
Thank you, chiefs.
yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I'm just going to step out for one.
Okay. So,
Land use.
yeah, the next item on our agenda is liberally titled "The Update on the Land Use Working Group." We've been discussing our various land use goals and facilities needs, and had on a number of occasions discussed the idea that the land use working group was expecting to reach a stage where they would be ready to provide some recommendations in the three areas that they've been looking at: DPW, facilities, public safety facilities, which we were just discussing, and municipal consolidation. And so we wanted to check in on that. So I asked Mary to pull together an approach to sort of bringing us up to speed on that so that we could consider what our next steps are in that planning.
Thank you, Mark. And what I did is I got on the phone and spoke with the co-chairs of the Land Use Working Group and asked,
Executive move.
and it was an executive decision on my part, and asked Sven if he would come and give us an update.
There you go.
All right. Sven Weber, co-chair of the Land Use Working Group. So we are getting to the finish line for the phase one. Just to remember, the phase one was focused on these 3 working packages to understand what needs to be done with public works, with fire, police, and with potential municipal consolidation. So this coming Friday, we have an all-group meeting where we start to bring the results of the subgroups together. We are starting this Friday with the public works subgroup. We prioritize this higher with the interest of getting an indication on their options and recommendations first because of the MCI discussions we have. So this will be this coming Friday. If there's enough time on the Friday, we will also have the fire and police subgroup presentation, but that depends on how long the discussions go for the first subgroup. And then on February 20th, we want to wrap it up. Whatever is left from this Friday will be continued on February 20th, and then also the municipal consolidation group. I think without giving too much on predefined results, there are certain areas where you can see where these subgroups are leaning. If you're looking at fire and police, just on the heels of what we just heard here, it is quite clear that the West Concord fire station situation is not working. And the discussions in the subgroup are leaning towards establishing a new headquarter in West Concord for fire. That could be by adding to the current location or at a new location in West Concord, mainly driven because already today the heat map shows the center of the action is already today in West Concord, and then we are adding 2 40Bs, we are adding MCI. It just makes sense to consider that. And then there will be a reevaluation of what can be done here on the current Walden Street campus. It is there will be some work to be done. Can this be renovated at all as a small fire substation and the main police station, or do we need to build? So there are certain scenarios that will be presented around that. Of course, all of that is the cost. That bears a significant cost, building a new fire headquarter and renovating or building a new police and fire sub in main Concord. With that, going to public works, I think there's 3 areas where new public works campus could be positioned. The subgroup is leaning to A, MCI, B, if Ripley would be vacated, that could be an option, and C, if you look at the current wastewater treatment facility here, there are some town-owned properties around that could be a third option. But again, let's see, we have to see the presentation, the logic, and how they rank these different areas. And then on the municipal consolidation, it seems to be that the group is leaning towards taking advantage of unused office space in Concord, to take, say, some unused office space, use that as an area of consolidation, and seems to be at the moment less on the Peabody side, rather sell that, zone it correctly, and take the money. But again, this is what I hear at the moment, what they're leaning to. They have to bring up their final recommendations.
You got ours right.
I think you should just mention, under municipal consolidation, it is consolidating and potentially a new office building, but an important part of the plan is what properties are available for strategic, I'll call it strategic use at this point.
Yeah. And then phase 2, just to be clear, is also then what we are entering then is what do we do with the leftover? So they're already built into different models. For example, in the municipal consolidation model, there are numbers in what could the town achieve if they put certain properties on the market depending on zoning. So we have to think about also the scenario where do we get all the money to build a new headquarter fire station? And is there lots, is there property available that can at least generate some of the cash flow so that we are not generating too much of a burden in there? I think it's generally clear that the task that the land use working group got was immense, let's say it that way. The time period very short. And I think for all 3 buckets, we have to see how, or the select board needs to see how the work is carried forward. After we get these high-level initial analysis of what can be done, a high-level order of the options, then the devil is in the detail in how you design this. What is the exact price? At the moment, we are working in order of magnitudes of prices or order of magnitudes what we can achieve in getting cash if we sell a property. There need to be additional steering committees, working groups, or whatever, where then you go into, so how do you design a new fire station? What do you do with the police station in very concrete numbers and feasibility studies, and really looking at what is possible then. And so we can only provide you a quick analysis based on information available, what the priorities could be, what the options are, and then the work needs to begin after that. So that's one of the things you have to see, that we are not done after that.
Paul?
Yeah, just do want to mention one other thing, really important. There's the important strategic intersection between what we're doing and MCI, not only with the public works, but with the municipal consolidation, because the housing that the state is interested in, we know it can be accomplished both within MCI and outside of MCI. And so that's in discussion as well. So, the housing emphasis and that overlap with the strategy with MCI is really, really important. I'll mention one other thing. There's a healthy appetite for capital planning around this, and it's obviously it's premature to put numbers on it, but I think probably at the next phase, we need to think about the capital planning around all of this. Can't do that right now, but with the work that comes forward, we in FinCom are interested in getting the capital planning sort of started.
So are you saying, Paula, you're hoping phase 2 of the land use working group comes out with some numbers?
Yeah,
Okay,
it should. I mean, better numbers than we have now, which are placeholders, right?
yeah, good, okay.
We've had placeholders in the capital planning for a number of years. I think
Yeah,
we need much better placeholders.
Well,
They're not final because
Better
we don't.
placeholders.
So if I remember correctly, the schedule for phase 2 is roughly through the end of the fiscal year, June
Yes.
of 26. So the thing that I've observed about this is I believe that this work is getting us to a fairly good conceptual analysis of what the opportunities are and what some of the paths that we can go down are, which is very similar to what the vision report for MCI gave us last mid-year regarding that property. It didn't say what to do. It said here's a range of what's possible, and these are the sort of outcomes that you can expect if you do certain kinds of things. And I think that the land use working group is getting us there with respect to municipal facilities. We have some strategic positioning that can be achieved with respect to the public safety facilities. It's very timely to be, talking about. I mean, if I was a community that was interested in joining a regional 911, I would want to know that that regional 911 was supported by some kind of capital plan and facilities plan that was going to support its growth into the future. And I think that that's the kind of, let's call it, good-paying jobs that might be nice to have in Concord, to be a hub with that. It goes along with our, we already serve as a medical hub of sorts with Emerson Hospital and other facilities in town. So it's a really nice synergy there. And the master planning process that I mentioned briefly for the MCI property is beginning to take those concepts and say, okay, which of those concepts should we select and pursue, and what's it going to take to pursue those? And I think there's a parallel set of questions that we can be handling that picks up on that work for land use and merges those two things together.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what we need to begin to think about as a board, is how to make sure that process happens, make sure that it doesn't get out ahead of itself, but is acting in a responsible and data-driven way to get us to the answers of what's going to actually yield some of these efficiencies and service improvements that we're all looking for.
So one thing I think for the select board to understand and think about is, it comes back to how to finance all of these activity, capital planning here. And I think looking at across, as a co-chair, as much as I can, I participate and listen into all of the subgroup meetings, and you can already see that Concord needs to generate cash by freeing up some of the property. And with that comes also the thinking about how to optimize the value on a certain property when you put it to the market, which again leads to potential rezoning of some of the properties. We have to, this is a realization for the select board and the community in totality, where there's some work to be done, that if we want to be able to finance a new fire headquarters, a new police station, moving public works and all of it, if you want to finance that, we have to maximize the value of the assets that are there when we turn them into cash. So A, willingness to turn properties into cash, and B, maximizing the value, for example, by rezoning.
Right.
And prepare the community for that. That is extremely important. Otherwise, you are not, let's say you're putting Peabody with the current zoning on the market, you're not getting a lot of money because it's residential AA. Means one house per 2 acres. Yeah.
It's about $4 million.
If this weren't interesting and complicated enough, I want to add another dimension, that's timing. Timing, how many dimensions does that make? Because all these can't happen at once.
Right.
And we have to determine, it may not be logical which one happens first. It's a combination of affordability and critical needs. And so that right now everything's on the same plane. So I think the select board and others can have to figure out how do we sequence all of these moves. There are a lot of moves in town, so the timing's going to be important.
Is some of that
time and
yeah.
finance.
Some of that, I think, is when we bring these things together right now in the working group. I believe there's some natural timings built in there that you can see evolving when you say, okay, option 1 is preferred for this, and then you look through how this unfolds for the properties, that you suddenly could free up properties earlier when you're committed to a certain option.
Do you think the land use group will have a suggestion on timing in this phase
at least
one
some
report?
high level? At least some
Phase
high
one,
level.
okay, so
That if you, but for that we have to see what are the different options and how they are prioritized in this.
Yeah.
And then I can already see the puzzle pieces a little bit coming together. but some properties are only available when you move out. But other properties might be available by just making the decision not to use the property.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great. I mean, you got, as you mentioned, right? You're looking at the DPW and the public safety and the municipal, and what are the recommendations around that? You marry that with MCI, right? And some of the considerations there that may influence that. And then I think you gotta look at the other, Kai's and Peabody and Ripley or any other satellites and say, okay, by solving for this, did I solve for these? Or do I actually have to consider the other options for those? And, then it just put it all together.
Big
boom,
puzzle.
boom, you got a nice little presentation, and you're all set. No, but my point is, I think the point of that is the way that you're looking at it makes sense. I mean, there's a logic to it and sort of
Yeah.
okay, we do this, and it feeds into this, which then allows us to sort of look at the overall picture and make some recommendations around sort of the timing of it.
Yeah.
and maybe some zoning considerations
Yes.
or things like that. So, makes sense.
Mary?
I have a lot of things in thinking of. One of the things that I think we need to talk about is getting community input, and when and how, I'm not sure how to do that. I know we're going to need community, we need community to agree on the zoning, but even before that, and it's a struggle between, do we go out with something half-baked, or do we wait until and get input, or do we wait until we have something pretty firm and get input? So this is something I'm just bringing up. I don't have an answer. I don't have an answer for that right now, but it's something that we need to keep, even though I want, because I don't have an answer, I don't want to think about it. We should be thinking about it. Also, you said, Sven, that by February 20th, you'll have the subcommittees will make their recommendations. And I'm wondering, should we ask them to come back on the 23rd and give us the definitive recommendations? What do you think? Do you want to do that, Mark, or
I think
not?
I do want to be able to name what those are. I think that where I was going to move in this discussion is we have the MCI advisory board that got us through a visioning and conceptual level. We know we need some steering or oversight board to manage the master plan process. The land use working group has really got a plan that's going to wrap up at the middle of the year with the work that we've asked them to do so far, and they're going to leave us with a concept. I think what we need to be engaging with as we have this next discussion is, what do we follow that up with? What's the scope of the planning? Because besides the whole municipal facilities, which is very important and I think absolutely critical because it's such an important piece of infrastructure for our community, we do have the housing dimension.
Right.
And we shouldn't forget the fact that there are other priorities like, certain levels of recreation and economic development that we are looking for out of some of these same properties. And how that gets prioritized, both as it works into what we communicate to the state and to potential developers about what we want to see MCI turned into, as well as what we might want to communicate to developers, that we might want to see some of these other properties turned into, assuming that the town vacates them for other facilities elsewhere.
Right.
So I think we need to start to bring that piece of work into focus and say, okay, who's going to lead that effort, and what's the sort of realistic piece of that can be done in the next year. I know I'm almost segueing into our goals discussion, but as I looked at sort of what I optimistically wrote down about a year ago as we were starting to think about goals for this year and how much of that could be done, we are looking at efforts that are going to take decades. Really. The development of the MCI property is going to take 10 to 20 years. And the Rotary is going to take that kind of time frame, and we've got to be comfortable with that timing and phasing to say, I mean, the last facilities master plan that I'm aware of actually failed at town meeting. It was for the schools. It was attempted
yeah,
in
that's right.
2002, 2004, something like that. It talked about how we were going to rebuild a middle school and then 3 elementary schools and then eventually the high school somewhere in there. Well, guess what? All of that got done in the next 20 years. It really did, with or without it. And that thinking formed that groundwork. And I think we're talking about laying the groundwork for something that's actually arguably at least as significant and probably more complex because it has these other dimensions like housing, economic development, as well as municipal facilities. But I think that's what we're looking for in the next phase.
You mentioned 2 planning efforts, one MCI, next phase of MCI, and then land use group. But in fact, aren't they one?
Yes.
They're really one effort.
Oh, yeah.
Given the
Right.
given the intersections of
Right.
these pieces, it's really one
Yeah.
thing. And I think that to have one steering effort to guide that is going to be much more efficient and much more meaningful.
I think that's true.
I want to bring up something while we're having this conversation. Sven mentioned the fact that we have to unlock cash, and we've made some assumptions in our financial modeling as far as unlocking cash from possibly Ripley, Harvey Wheeler, and also I want to bring that in. I want to let us know that we need to talk to people beyond just here in the Land Use Working Group in the MCI, and specifically, I'm thinking we need to start bringing the schools into this conversation. And I know that you're the liaison to the schools, so to kind of hear their thoughts about Ripley, and if they're on board with some of the goals that we're trying to accomplish for the town, if you could start that conversation with them, that would be great. Thank you.
Yes.
Do we need to have sort of a joint meeting?
Eventually.
But, I mean, I
Just on
guess-
that point,
Yeah.
since we work with Tracy,
And we have Tracy
Right,
on.
when you have
Tracy.
Tracy, right?
we sort of know if they're on board with the consolidation part of that.
I don't get an enthusiastic feeling,
From,
Tracy. So I'd like a better,
Make sure that we're,
I'm getting,
I would like
I
to
get a
have
different
a more
vibe, but she's not
cross-
here to figure it out.
a board-to-board
Yeah.
agreement
That
as
makes
opposed
sense.
to,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
thank
yeah,
you.
let's
Yeah,
make
I-
sure that we're having
Okay.
the broader
I
discussion.
would appreciate,
yeah,
I think
just-
I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think on Ripley, the challenge is what is the scenario when Ripley is not vacated? So at the moment, we know from the school they're not investing in it and wait for a failure on the building. But that's not a prudent
It's not a good plan.
situation, because when this building fails, it fails quick, and we need to repair it fast. And that is typically the most expensive repair. So at the moment, in that corner of the puzzle, what is the status quo on Ripley, or that is a little bit unsure, other than consolidating it with town.
Right.
And there, of course, you as a select board need to have the support from the school committee
exactly.
to say,
So
that is the path to go.
What is their thinking?
Let's have a
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah, let's
But-
have a
but I-
conversation.
But I'm confident that it's moving that direction.
You are?
Yeah, I mean, knowing that they have no capital planning for improvements at Ripley in their plans.
Well, no plan is not a plan.
No, but I mean, they're not thinking of staying in the Ripley building, so anyway.
Okay,
we
okay.
should-
I just want to broaden the
let's
conversation.
just broaden the
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So can I just ask Sven a question? I'm just concerned, like, the public doesn't really know much what's going on and what documentation is here. So there's meetings that are going on the next 2 Fridays, but then are we going to have a report that's going
Yeah,
to be
so-
presented? And, I mean,
So the goal is to have a report out of phase 1.
so is that
Can we
February? Yeah.
can we do the written report from the Friday the 20th to Monday the 23rd?
We can. Ours is done.
You can definitely have a
Yeah, but there's not only the sum is not the addition of all the 3 sub-reports. You need to have a build it somewhere. But
Yeah.
let's see. Perhaps we can with AI and so on. You can do a lot these
You'll
days.
have a PowerPoint at least.
Yeah,
So-
well, PowerPoint, just
Yeah.
getting the word out in the public.
Yeah.
To your
So-
point about the public, there's been a lot of meetings going on, and,
Meeting after.
That's,
Yeah.
yes.
I mean, we just
Yeah.
Yeah.
need to
But your
start.
point about public communication is really important, because I think after the 23rd, since it's a public meeting, we'll be able to have other public discussions, because phase 1 will definitely be done at that point. So
will.
I-
that's the The public needs
Yeah,
to.
I believe the biggest discussions will happen in phase 2 of the land use working group, because we will then talk about what are we doing with the leftover properties.
Right.
Yeah, is in that sense, okay, what are we doing with the Peabody building? What are we doing with, let's say, we got a letter for that, or you saw that, saying, what are we doing with the egg fields near the wastewater treatment facility? Because there are certain ways the egg fields, if they're residential, already zoned residential B, could be a significant income for the town. But this is where you get, where you have to build and communicate with the community to say, what are the trade-offs?
Yep.
Achieving capital for this or not. And this is where most of the input comes, as we already saw on the letters we received.
But Sven, the phase 1 recommendation will have the recommendations. So to put the recommendations, you can't get to phase 2 unless you have the public on board
Yes.
with phase 1.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
But, right, even though all the details aren't there, but the concepts are there.
Yeah.
So I think we have to have the public on board with the concepts,
Yeah.
which are, I think they're pretty specific concepts.
Yeah, but you can still, with a leftover, let's pick, again, it doesn't need to go that far, but let's pick these egg fields. If they're not used for public works, then the question is, do you leave them as agriculture use, or do you use them to generate cash?
Recognizing, I
I'm-
think we
again-
always need to recognize.
Yeah,
that
we need
in
community input on that
Yes.
one.
That's what I'm saying. This is where I think phase two,
Civic community input.
phase
Yeah.
2 will be the significant piece where the community needs to understand what are the options, what is the logic, and the discussions around what to do with these things might go longer than what the land use working group then is saying in phase 2, because we are end of June, it's over for us.
Well,
And then it continues around that.
and it's,
There are a lot of, I think the alternatives analysis about what to do with particularly land in Concord, which we know we're not making any more of, needs to be
very-
approached pretty carefully, both with respect to what are the options now, and also what is the potential future uses of something.
Right.
For example, just because they, if you take Peabody and Ripley both off the table and develop them as something, anything, whatever it is, what we've also done is given away two of the two spare school sites that exist in Concord. And so we do need to back up into the housing conversation and say, what if we added 1,000 housing units or more to the town over a decade or something like that? That's not inconceivable with the kinds of development that we're talking about. Do we actually need any of those? Is there any scenario under which we're going to need a new school building? And so if a piece of property ends up in this, both no longer used for its current purpose, but it may actually, its best purpose might actually be being held in reserve for some future use that we can anticipate. So these have to be pretty deep conversations. And that's, I think, where, to Mary's point, getting some of the other groups in town who think about recreation, who think about the schools and what their capacity are, who think about housing and other uses of property, need to really get engaged so that we take a look at each property and recognize what its potential uses are for the community.
One other fun fact is that 2229 Main Street
Yeah, I was waiting for that.
is not going to appear prominently, I think, in any of these recommendations. So talk about a piece of property that's in reserve.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a different situation and needs some planning around.
Right.
That-
and there's revenue potential there, so
What's that?
there could be revenue from there, so
There definitely could
we
be
need to
revenue from there,
seriously
but
look at that
It's still out
within the
there.
right timeline, right?
Turns out to be a spare.
Okay.
That's a good point.
So we're up to date on where the land use working group, thank you, Sven.
Thank you.
Thank you and the rest of your committee. I think you're probably going to have some extra people watching on Friday.
Yep.
Good.
So that brings us to, not terribly far behind,
Select board goals.
a review of
Goals.
our goals and how we're doing. So this is kind of a four-parter.
Yeah,
And
really.
What I thought we would do is both look at our FY '26 goals, sort of as a check-in, taking a look at which ones we've had some success achieving, which ones may need a little bit more focus. Then I'm going to ask the town manager to review her implementation. And I think we all have a sheet
Yeah, we do. Yep.
here with hopefully color-coded
Yep.
status on tasks. And then I'm going to ask Wendy to make some suggestions about how we might begin to approach an FY '27 goal process. This is, as we've talked about, we're building, we've baked the FY '27 budget. And I've always thought it was, let's use the word curious, that we
Yeah.
pass a budget and then start talking about the goals
I know.
for that very same fiscal year. So this is at least an attempt to contemplate what the goals are, when the budget hasn't been passed yet, and ideally maybe someday when the budget is being actually built. And then I believe we're going to hear from Jess on the staff goals. So that's a lot to do in, I gave us 20 minutes for this. So we don't need to dive deep on every specific part of it, but let's take a look at our select board goals first.
Okay.
And there were several sections. The first section was
MCI.
the MCI development. And, for one, I'd say the vision plan was completed, but the master planning RFP, which is probably going to represent the implementation of some vision, is underway. That work will probably take us most of 2026 to get done. So I'm going to say this one is partially completed this year, but it's going to go in. The zoning design is definitely not going to occur until the back end of the master planning process. DCAM's RFP requirements are going to be a piece that comes out of that as well, so that's also tied into that. And the capital plan is mostly done on the wastewater treatment facility, but we still have an open window for negotiation of that through August of '26. And we've at least indicated to the state that we're interested in moving ahead on that. There is some technical work going on around the wastewater treatment facility, so I think that all of these are likely to finish in FY '27 rather than '26, but probably in 2026.
Yeah, good progress.
Okay, good progress.
Can I just ask a clarification on the wastewater treatment plant?
Yes.
So we had that August date to finish that negotiation. Is that going to be hindered or changed at all with our other discussions around sandbed expansion, et cetera? Or is this all going to get tied into the MCI MOU?
I think they're going, that the scope of it is going to be expanded to include
Okay.
that.
Okay, but we think that we can do that independent of the MCI master planning process. Okay.
Well, largely.
I mean, originally, that was our plan, I just,
In parallel would be how I
Okay.
would put it.
all right.
Okay.
All right, but this is definitely just, instead of talking 27 separately, this is definitely moving into a 27
Yeah, I
goal for
think
sure.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to continue into '27. Cell service, we did get an analysis of small cells distributed address systems. West Concord, we know the ride-out is under consideration, the MBTA lot is under consideration. I don't know, I'm looking at Megan, but if there's anything else that we want to point to there, I would call that in progress. The third option for Concord Center, we have two, the land, Do we have
We are spending our time trying to make sure those two
Are working,
progress
right.
at this
progress?
time.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
can't you-
And the landfill's still going.
We could call, I thought about
Too
that,
small,
but
no.
I thought that might be grading on a curve there. It'll be nice to see those go up.
The two AT&Ts.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey,
Yeah. There's got to be at
It's an
least
option.
4 houses that are going to get
But
better
you've got the
service because
landfill
of
and
that.
Well, the landfill's there too, so I mean, we're,
And I mean,
yeah,
we just,
The landfill and
Umbrella
Verizon,
landfill.
so there are 3.
yeah,
we just got to get, I mean, to me, it's more about getting those done.
Yeah.
Like
yeah,
what-
right.
Exactly.
And I know it's not all under our control, but what can we continue to do to make sure that
Right.
we're getting those?
Yes, I
And
agree.
the planning board is not bringing us a wireless.
Yes, they are. They absolutely are, yep. And we will be giving a presentation.
Did I
as part of
miss that?
Yeah, you
in
did.
the-
Oh, yeah,
in
you
the
did.
warrant?
It's on there.
I was
It's
looking-
definitely there.
What article is it?
That's probably the last
30.
one. Don't worry, it's there. Don't worry about it, it's there.
Okay.
It is there.
Believe me, it's there.
We didn't
Alright.
memorize them yet.
The type must have been too small for me.
It's there.
Okay.
It is.
Wastewater treatment system,
so just on cell service, this, as far as 27, this rolls into more of an implementation.
Yeah, I think it'll be implementation more,
Right.
35.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sure, okay.
okay, great. Are we
wastewater.
going to see are we going to wait for the hearing for Article 35, or are we going
I've seen
to
it,
do something separate?
but it's,
Okay.
You have your next meeting, and then the week after that is the planning board
Planning
public.
board
Yeah,
hearing,
it's gonna
so
be the
we'll-
Tuesday.
That'll be
Yeah.
fine then. If we need to talk about it more afterwards, we will.
yeah, I think that makes sense.
Wastewater treatment system capacity, these are objectives associated with the current wastewater treatment system. Carrie, do you have any comments on any of these?
Alan still on? Alan Cathcart is online.
Yes,
Yep.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. To be clear, the wastewater capacity is not specific to MCI, but MCI is a big piece of it. At this point, it's our primary objective to try and look at what we can do with that facility to expand beyond just what would accommodate redevelopment of MCI. So that is a piece of it. There is a component that we will include that is consideration of expanding our existing facility, again through groundwater recharge. And I think we're also going to be putting some time and energy looking at the costs of doing expansion. And you'll probably see some activity on our sewer improvement fees with consideration of, what are those, established. We're working with our consultant to evaluate that. So all those are pieces of the capacity discussion. And really, the other thing is the awareness of the community, which I think MCI is really drawing a lot of attention. But again, to those who are paying attention, I think the broader community is, going to be educated a little bit more when we talk about the sewer improvement fee. And so that's sort of a general overview.
But Alan, is there something underway to look at expanding our existing capacity?
Yeah, so all the two alternatives we currently have are what we may consider to update. We did an assessment, I think 2000, I think it was 12 or so, at the existing wastewater treatment plant for the total of about 155,000 gallons a day for groundwater discharge. We're going to be reevaluating those costs, but we think, depending on what we can do with MCI, there may be a more cost-effective approach looking at that facility. So those are the only two alternatives we have to, in essence, expand the capacity for the community.
I mean, perhaps there should have been a different set of goals, but these 3 goals, I think they haven't been started. There are other goals that maybe have superseded these, like.
What about,
Well, the interconnection,
what about the interconnection
we did.
between the
He was working
MCI
on
system and our existing system?
We have.
design and
Yes,
capital.
so that is, if we are to have capacity to find above and beyond service of the MCI redevelopment, then we'd be looking at, and we've done some preliminary design, actually, to look at connecting the Assabet pump station on Main Street to the MCI facility. So that is
That's in
part of that
progress.
work.
That's in progress.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So you mentioned sewer improvement fee a few times. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, so the sewer improvement fee is the basis by which new development or change of use, which is a site or a facility that's on our system, needs more demand. They're charged a fee that is used to offset any cost to expand capacity. So the basis of that hasn't been evaluated for over 10 years. And well, we know what it was 10 years ago. There's been a lot of development, infill. We've actually committed some of the capacity to some redevelopment. So we're working with our consultant to look at that fee and make sure it is reasonable and will cover the costs of any future expansion. So that's going to be sort of an update. We'll probably be including that discussion at the rate hearing that we have in generally May, the Public Works Commission.
So I wonder if I can go back to Cameron's question, because Alan, if I could prompt you, I think you probably have more to say. So we have an existing application from years ago in front of the appropriate authorities to expand capacity at the existing site. And you have engaged in outreach to the governor's office, lieutenant governor, DEP. Could you say more about maybe the status of that?
Yeah, well, we haven't moved on that yet for the existing facility. We did what we call sort of invasive hydrogeologic loading of our sand beds over on our facility. We're putting that on hold until we get more information on the MCI. The MCI seems to be more potentially economically feasible, but that's the analysis. It's more of a feasibility analysis that we're going to be running. We have held off on doing any more invasive work at MCI at this point, but we are engaging with our consultant to give us a proposal to do that work, and really depending on when it makes the most sense, we don't know if that'll be done over the summer, or that'll be part of the negotiation likely with DCAM, as well as Junction Village, because part of that work needs to be done on what they presently control, their property.
So any permitting is really going to move to it FY27, sounds
Well,
like.
but just regarding that application, Alan, correct me if I'm wrong, we've had to pivot a bit because we hit a roadblock with EPA, and we've had to pivot, and they threw up technical roadblocks, and so Alan's had to pivot to sand beds and now to an MCI strategy. So we have to pivot.
But we haven't, not moving it forward until we get more comparators with MCI.
And we're stuck.
Right.
We've
It's really
kind of
just-
run the course
It's
that
really
we
been a goal
can,
for
yes.
next year. That's an important
Really, it's
capacity
really,
goal, which is not on here, but it is a goal.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to
Well,
understand
yeah.
the path to solving our sort of wastewater capacity and which avenues there are. And I know there's the MCI avenue. It sounds like right now there really isn't an independent avenue that's
Effort.
entirely separate
Yeah.
from that.
Right.
Well, the sand
We'll see
bed,
how the MCI thing goes along and then decide whether it sort of just goes through that avenue or whether we sort of resuscitate a different option.
right, I mean, there's sand beds at MCI also, so
sand
that's
beds
part
at
of
our
it.
existing plant. is also-
Existing, right, I know.
It's also
Two, yeah,
an option.
two large ones, yeah, right.
Got it.
So
Yeah.
there's something here for 27 that we're going to put in here, right, for sure.
lot there.
Okay,
We're gonna need
moving on.
more discussion.
Yeah.
Transportation in the Rotary. So we have had a number of meetings with Mass DOT. I think we're coming to a much better understanding of what path they're on. And that is leading us to an understanding that we do have to identify what we really mean by town priorities, and I think we've got to set ourselves up to be stating what those priorities are in no uncertain terms. If we want to have an appropriate an outcome that the town is going to be happy with.
Yeah.
Because right now, I would characterize it as Mass DOT is on a path which looks like trying to increase the regional flow of Route 2,
Right.
meaning make it more highway-like as it goes past that. If we're not okay with that, then I think that we need to figure out a really clear way to articulate that and communicate it to Mass DOT. I think we've had enough meetings with them now to sort of gauge out where the four alternatives they have. One of them is at grade, and the rest of them are all grade separated, which means more ramps and you know, really creating a highway flow. And this is, speaking for myself, I question the value to anyone for creating a highway where the rotary is that gets to the light at Baker Avenue and then stops.
Right.
I think there's limited value in that. So my personal feeling is that the priority that we should probably be looking at as a town is to encourage a deeper look that incorporates the Baker Avenue intersection with the rotary in its redesign and tries to come up with something that helps us prioritize our local flow around those two intersections together. And so we were in the most recent coordination meeting we were having with last Friday, it became kind of apparent that if we want to advance our position with Mass DOT, we're going to have to find a way to engage the right group to sort of articulate that vision or some other vision that we see as the priority for the town and really put that on paper. Because I don't think that at this stage of the game, we've been able to really be clear about what it is we think the town wants.
Isn't the MCI master plan one vehicle for formalizing
Yes.
what that should be?
Mhm.
Maybe not the only one,
Not the only
because that
one.
deals with the access.
Right.
And maybe the timing isn't, we won't have that in the next month. We'll have that.
Yeah, I think it's a good question as to exactly when, you know, exactly how long does it take, you know, how long do we have before Mass DOT, for example, closes their design process and says this is the solution that they're planning to build? And, you know, that could be even a couple more years. So I don't know that there's, you know, that this is on a very short timeline, but I think that the sooner that we engage in that discussion ourselves, the better. And I think that may involve more detailed, we have the Stantec on board working in the transportation strategy and mobility, and I think that we're going to have to bring some focus to that, to answering that question, to say, what do we really want to do? And I think the two options basically are, do we want Route 2 to look like a highway, or do we want it to look like something else going through there? That's the basic choice. And what I recognized last week is I think we have a gap because we don't really have any particular group that's really focused on bringing that specific, you know,
Yep.
piece of positioning into focus and then getting it to the right place. So I think that's one of the things that, I think it's possible for us to do it. I just think that we need to get focused on it in order for it to
So
be
you
done.
don't think it can wait for master planning?
I'm not sure how much it needs to wait for master planning.
I guess we have so many things to do.
Yeah.
I'm just sad.
Yeah, I'm just pointing to it because
But I get it.
we haven't, you know, the question is, how do we figure out what the town priorities actually are?
Yeah.
You know,
well, to me, it's around that site, but it's also about safety, so.
Yeah,
But it's really about, so we have a highway up into the current rotary,
right.
and then we have something other than a highway going from Main Street through Concord. Then
Yeah.
it becomes a highway again. So the question is, between the rotary and that first traffic light of Main Street, what do we want that to look like? Which very much includes access to the
Yes.
MCI side. So I think the access part of this is
This,
really
you know,
key.
bicycle safety, public safety, all
Well,
those issues get
yeah,
into that
and
rotary
the permeability
redesign.
between West
Right.
Concord and the rest of Concord,
Yeah.
that's
Right.
always been an issue.
Right. The thing that strikes me is that we have 4 little sort of islands. We have the MCI, Baker Avenue,
Yeah.
the small business district that I continue to refer to as where paparazzi was,
Yes, Elm Street,
but, you know, Chipotle, Starbucks, and Dunkin', I guess.
Yep.
Maybe I can turn that into an acronym. And the state property also, you know, the Grove Street, Asbeth Avenue neighborhood is really, you know, almost wants to be part of that. Asbeth Avenue, as most people remember, used to actually open right on the
Right,
Route
right,
2, right
right.
by the bridge. And so those things are all separated from each other by this cross of Route 2 and the river. And the question is, to my way of thinking, the town priority ought to be able to find a way to bring those back into, you know, into proximity, take advantage of the proximity that they have to each other to actually, you know, support each other. That'd be the priority I'd put on the table. But that's just me. I only drive through the rotary every day.
All right, so
So,
is it?
so are you, you're focused on that, though. What about the rest, what about the part
Oh.
that Paul was talking about? Is anybody talking about that with
The,
DOT? No?
Well, so we had 3 goals in transportation, comprehensive transportation and mobility strategy. I believe that's
That's
under,
coming up.
that's in process.
Right,
Okay.
With this
Keep going.
Stantec work and
Yep.
review of the proposals in the sidewalk and traffic calming programs. I think that is
That's
also,
in process
that's
as well.
also
It is in
All
process. but is
so
it
I was just
funded?
pointing to, you
Okay,
know,
yeah, we got,
as usual, when we grade, we focus on the ones that aren't getting done.
okay.
All right. Town facilities, we're seeking funding from town meeting for number 1. And public safety, public works, so this is what we just talked about in the land use. 2229, Paul, do you want to make a comment about those?
Yeah, EPA has responded, according to Mina, but they won't meet with us till March. So we're still in the early negotiations. It's moving,
Right.
but it's moving as we thought it would be, kind of slowly at first. And but they've seen what our position is. We're going to see what their position is. So I would say by the end of calendar year '26, we'll have a good idea of where we're going on that.
What about
Specifically.
this second one? The Maximus had indicated that they were willing to do some things.
That was in the original timeline,
That's
right?
been
This was
taken
a
out.
26 milestone.
Is
That's
that
why it's in here.
going on later?
I put it in there. I
There-
didn't know what it meant or if we'd do anything with it. But it sounded like an opportunity. I mean, the state said, we'll
Yeah,
do
it is.
something
It's
for
kind
you
of-
if you
it's
can
kind
tell
of
us.
moot at
That's
this point,
right.
'cause we
I
don't-
Right?
remember, you're right.
We don't know
They
what
did.
we want it to be, and we know what they're going to, they're going to grade it all flat.
They're going to grade it flat.
The only thing is, they may plant trees that will be a mistake, but that's, we'll have time next fiscal
They
year.
won't plant the trees till 28?
So we don't have any urgent need to get on
Okay.
the radar right now.
All right. G1, develop a plan for increasing commercial tax revenues through increases in percentage of taxable entities relative to residential.
Not started.
Didn't the Mary, didn't the EVC start this work?
They look at commercial tax revenues, and it's, I guess they would say that it's holding steady. We haven't, we've been able to.
Increasing it.
Yes, they've been able to, well, we've been successful replacing commercial storefronts that have gone vacant with new commercial tenants, but we haven't increased incremental commercial property taxes within town. And I think we're hoping to do that through MCI.
Okay.
Well, but
So as we
and
look-
maybe MCI and 2229 and others, but I don't think we've engaged on this
I don't think we have
specifically
either.
seriously at all.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't know for 27 if we will, if the plan is really MCI
What do you
in our
think?
master plan.
Well,
Well, I think we have opportunities to start in this process with potential developers and brokers.
Engaging
I've been
them, for
talking to
sure.
some about doing that with 2229 to start the
I
process.
think-
It's going to take a while.
Yeah, but
We can't
have
just
to
sit and
start-
wait.
Yeah. I mean, we're not going to solve it.
No.
No, no,
It's not
no.
going to just suddenly.
We have to get a process going.
But maybe in 27, we're going to engage
What
developers.
can we do?
or
to-
Start.
What can we do
We
to?
should initiate a process to do this seriously.
This is one of those
To do
areas,
what?
I do want to hear from Carrie. This is one of those areas, though, that as we try to consolidate the land use
Right.
question about what do you do with the property if you vacate it for municipal use, this is one of those things that
That's
could
right.
be a priority in there.
Absolutely.
Carrie?
well, I think this is one of the reasons why you have an Economic Vitality Committee.
Yeah.
And I think something like this should be put in front of them to bat around and come back with a plan.
Right.
Perhaps, but that feels to me a change in their scope.
I
That-
agree.
Well-
That committee's been focused on health of town centers and vacancy. They have not been focused
But
on
couldn't
strategic
they?
planning.
They
for-
could be, we could
They
expand.
could.
With Mimi,
They
right?
could,
Well,
but you need-
Mimi's job description is clearly economic vitality and not economic development.
this is more
The
development
charge
officer.
of the Economic Vitality Committee is clearly economic vitality and not economic development. If we want economic development, that's a whole separate thing. And right now, we don't have the resources for that.
Well, we don't
I'm
have
not saying
any
this very
fo-
well.
focal point for that.
Right.
We do have some properties where we could do that, MCI.
We do have some properties. We absolutely have
But
some.
we don't have any engagement with, serious engagement.
I think as you think about your fiscal 27
I think
goals,
so.
you should be thinking about how your goals are communicated out to the various boards and committees. And the earlier that you establish your goals and either sit down collectively with boards or committees or through your liaison assignments,
Yep.
Yeah.
sit down with them, these need to be communicated. And I think this one, I do think the Economic Vitality Committee, maybe the charge needs to be expanded, but I think they are an appropriate place to raise this. And the Planning Board, you may want to have a joint conversation with EVC and Planning Board.
Gets to the zoning
I
question.
mean, it is going to be interesting. We are talking about a lot of rezoning.
That's good
Yeah.
advice, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To
it's the plan- yeah.
recharge the economic.
That's a good
We have
idea.
a group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is economic vitality, it's just a
Yeah.
different direction.
I mean, we started calling it economic vitality because that seemed to be what was more acceptable. But I think most people thought at some point
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
would morph
Evolve.
into something that was more development related.
Okay.
Good. Housing. Support this implementation of Concord's housing production plan. So there have been some parcels identified, like the
There ha-
91B.
91B,
Yeah.
yep, that's right. And that's in process, so we could say
Yeah.
in process.
Process, yeah.
You have the quarterly housing roundtables to check in on progress.
And there's this comment about secure financial support,
Yes, so that's advocating for CPC funds.
Yeah.
and the
the-
home rule petition with the real
and
estate
the-
transfer.
Trust is very good at that.
Yep.
So yes, I'd say
Yep.
that's, meets our goal.
Okay. And then the next set of goals, section 2, financial. We have the reserve policy articles, we've talked about that.
Yep. Audits are underway.
The audits are underway, so it does look like
A and B.
At least-
Good.
24 will certainly be done by June, 25 be done by June?
Yes, we
Yep.
expect to have drafts of 25 at the end of March.
Right.
Great,
Okay.
excellent.
And
Maybe.
review of free cash, so town revenues estimated. How are we doing at the outlook side of, the forecasting side of what goes into the tax calculation?
Well, we always did revenue estimates in September and October. That is not a problem. I think we can return to that, and then we looked at them again in March. So I think those 2 dates are good. I'm not 100% sure if in October of 2025, the Finance Committee went through that.
Yeah.
But I think going forward, that is easy enough to do. The free cash estimate in October, I think, is generally reasonable, but I don't know. October, I know Jennifer has said
Yeah.
that she has done that in previous communities. That's great, if we can get it certified by October. That seems a little early, but it doesn't seem early for an estimate.
Okay.
We're still awaiting our current free cash certification. I'm hoping it's this week, but as Jennifer reported last week, it
We're
was
number 10.
submitted into the state DOR, I think January 12 or 15.
Right, and there were 10 in front of us.
Or-
All right, local receipts goals.
I do know that Mimi is tracking vacancy rates, and we'll report on that quarterly to the Economic Vitality Committee. The second thing here, I really think this was in response to a problem we were having with our prior CFO, and we know what our local receipts are, and we are tracking those up through 2025. And they're on track. They've rebounded from COVID.
Right.
And then.
Permit fees have been done.
Right.
Yeah, they were done.
Good.
Yeah.
All right, and
I just want to, before we leave this topic, when we look at FY27 goals, I think we need to rethink this. What dashboard do we really want to
Yeah,
look at?
right.
Because this doesn't get it for me.
Yeah, it doesn't.
It's
do it
like,
for
oh
me
yeah, we're
either.
keeping track of things, but we really don't know how we're feeling
No, you want a
overall.
goal,
You know,
right.
so a better dashboard, I think, would be better.
sounds like a
A
good
better
idea.
dashboard would be better.
A comment on
Brilliant.
27 goals as well. I look at the audit category here, and given the issues that we had, it
Fine.
seems like we
Yeah,
need to have a
that's gonna
goal
need-
on
Yeah, these,
renewing confidence in our financial stewardship.
well, and that's why this was here. I mean, we had an issue last year, that's why it's here, so,
Well, that was more.
right, but you're saying
more
general,
in timing.
financial,
It was more in timing, right?
right, but now, yeah, I see what you're saying.
The issue's
Yep, I hear what you're
different, so,
Yep,
Carrie, your goals, you call it financial resilience. This is financial, maybe it's the same thing, but financial integrity
yeah, trust and,
is
yeah.
important.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, we need to resolve the
I think the
material
audit
Yeah.
will go a long way.
Yeah.
Part of the
FY25
part of the
audit.
plan,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay. Pilot.
Pilot. I think there was
think
something
so.
on our desk about
There's
this.
Yeah, you just
Yeah,
did
there's an
something,
added-
but I'm wondering if,
I did just put something together because at least 2 of you recently have asked me about this. Obviously, we have not made the progress that I would have hoped that we would have made at this point. What I'd like to do is to provide a new plan of action at the next meeting. I don't think it takes much time, and I feel like we have some time in the calendar to do this. Obviously, we are not going to meet the select board's target, but I'd like to get us on track to move this forward.
that'd be great. And maybe it's a 27 goal. We can talk further about it.
Okay,
And Carrie, I mentioned, I think the previous plan that was put together conceptually is a good plan. It just wasn't executed. We had
Yes.
some
The
good
pilot.
I don't,
agree.
well, we can talk about the reset plan. I don't agree with it,
I
You
would
don't think so?
no.
reach
Okay.
out.
But that's okay, let's let Carrie
I
come
would-
back with
happy
a
to
plan.
schedule it.
Okay.
I would just, there was a big article in the Boston Globe yesterday
Yeah,
on the,
Yep.
about how they're pursuing
That's
their
right.
their
Right.
pilot
The city.
program in the city.
Yeah,
How
the
yeah, in the
city's
city,
going
yep.
You're right.
after
Yeah.
what money they're going after, percentages they're targeting, how they're
Yep,
going,
yep.
looking at different entities. If we haven't,
Yeah.
it
Yep.
might provide some thoughts
Yep.
just on how we're approaching it.
Let's move to the affordability and budgeting category.
Oh, gosh.
Using benchmarks to establish town budget efficiency opportunities.
we did some.
Yeah, so we
FTEs.
started we shared with you public safety. That was what we had through the priority-based budgeting initiative. We would expect to be providing that same level of information for each of the cost centers. I think it was helpful going through public safety because it definitely identified that we were on the higher end, and we need to understand why. In terms of FTEs, we need to understand why, and are there opportunities to make changes in how we provide service.
Yeah, we definitely have started that.
Yeah.
Let's continue. I think it's,
Okay. Examine the impacts of affordable housing, new developments on town budgets and tax impacts. I know we did some of this modeling inside the MCI concept
Yeah.
work. I'm not sure whether we've done that for any of the other projects or.
or we just sort of, more holistically, I think, if you
Yeah.
look at all, because it becomes the sum total of them, right?
Yeah.
That I think is the,
In the housing production session that I attended at the MMA conference, there was a pretty lively discussion
Oh,
across
yeah.
communities about what sorts of housing goals communities really wanted to have. So, once you've got the 10% SHI, which we do have, then actually coming up with a local definition of what kinds of housing the community wants to develop and why is really important. One community, I think it was Truro, was talking about the fact that they really landed on, we want to build housing that people who grew up here and run small businesses in our community want to live in as a local goal for them, because they were feeling like those people were getting priced out of a relatively challenging market by, other potential buyers. And so they were looking for that. And I was just struck by that because it seemed like it was a fairly simple mission statement about what kind of housing was being developed. And I would challenge us to sort of come up with something as straightforward as that.
So
Agree, so-
housing goes beyond SHI.
Just like, is
Yeah.
it for elderly housing, or what's your goal? What is your focus?
And I
Right.
think that's important for us to
Right.
engage with, not only because it's a good way to sort of refocus the effort, but also
We're gonna need
because the signals that we're getting, to the extent that we are getting signals from the state about what they're likely to want,
Right,
is they want a quantity,
that's right,
but they don't
Care
really
about
seem to
SHI.
care that much
That's
about what
Ability.
that's right.
kind of housing it
They
is.
don't.
In
right?
fact, if anything, in order to dispose of the MCI property without costing the state a lot of money,
Mhm.
they're more than happy to have that go into,
Luxury.
more
Well,
market rate.
market-based,
Yeah,
whatever,
right,
yeah,
right,
whatever
right.
sort of.
They're looking for the market to clean that place up.
Well, if you remember, our goal as a select board last year
Was workforce.
Workforce housing.
Workforce.
Right.
We specified workforce housing,
Yeah.
and we haven't built any, but there's some in the pipeline that we're hoping
Yeah.
will meet that goal. So we did that before.
Right.
We did focus on that, so I think you're saying maybe we should think more about,
Yeah.
be more specific.
Well, just to redefine, when you say beyond SHI, you're really saying beyond affordable housing.
What type of housing? What type of housing?
80% of AMI.
No, I know what SHI is, but
Yeah.
you're not saying,
Beyond that percentage.
you're not saying we don't, there's probably
Beyond
two
that
goals.
percentage.
It's sort of what kind of housing we want, but then there's affordable housing goal
Yeah.
as well.
Right.
So they're probably two different versions
Wait,
of
say that
housing.
again, Paul?
We're not abandoning the need for affordable housing, but
Right.
we need to look at housing beyond affordable housing, right?
What's the whole picture?
Right,
This
it's
is the
just,
whole
what's the
picture,
mix of
but
housing?
I would
that you're
separate
looking
Yeah,
that
go ahead.
into two separate pieces.
Affordable and affordable.
What is, I'll call more strategic for the town? What kind of housing do we want to develop? And then part of that is affordable. I think that it's two different efforts.
Yeah, but we control
Well,
the
the
breadth.
trust is focused
the
on
trust.
affordable.
Yeah, right, and even that, you could say
Yeah.
how do they define affordable? Because they're, like,
Well, it's how you define affordable. I mean, it is a complex, because it's how you define.
very,
It's
yeah.
complicated, but we're also talking about new properties, and what kind of zoning do we want, and what kind of
Correct.
housing do we want?
Right.
Do we want it? And so,
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think-
you're
I
right.
think we
Do
do
we
have
want
control.
denser? Yep.
Yeah,
over more of that than affordable.
Yes, there's different levers, right?
Or you could even turn the question a little bit and say, if you went around and actually surveyed people in Concord who have some kind of housing need that's unmet, like you're living in Concord right now, but your housing doesn't really fit you
right.
the way that you'd like it to, what kind of housing do you really want? Presuming you want to stay in Concord.
Yeah.
So what is there a housing demand for that's not being met
Downsizing.
to keep a community intact in a way?
Well,
Yeah.
we'll talk about
But
new
then how do
goals
we-
later.
Okay, so on the goals,
The
so on
difference-
I mean,
27.
it is,
But I don't think we haven't accomplished number 2.
No,
We haven't done anything on 2. as far
No,
as I'm
No.
concerned.
you're right.
right. And
We had some articles that looked at the impact on schools, but that's a
And-
piece of
and
it,
three-
small piece of it.
3 we've done, FinCom,
understand debt levels and tax impact under different, so
Capital
that is really trying to take a look at how efficiently are we deploying capital to produce housing? Is that really?
I don't remember.
I'm not
Was
sure.
this under, I wasn't sure if it was housing or not.
it's not, that's under affordability budgeting,
I mean, I think,
It's not
I
housing.
always
Yeah.
thought of that as more sort of like,
capital.
yeah, like if we're gonna
Okay.
replace all the
Well,
municipal
yeah.
buildings and
Okay.
yeah, I mean,
what
we're,
is the scope of what we're like looking at spending?
so
and
this really,
What kind of, what's coming down,
yeah, I
coming
mean,
down the tracks?
we're definitely going to need to have a focus on capital planning.
Yeah,
Right.
yes,
Strategy.
Yes.
So this, I mean, we're not doing this this year.
Well, FinCom has done this very effectively for each expenditure, for each
Right,
article.
but not
the-
for,
not for a
Plan.
plan.
not
Yeah, you're
the
right.
strategic plan. We need,
Use, we start to look and
Exactly.
say, okay.
right,
Yeah.
Like, then you get into the big picture, like, okay, when does debt maybe roll off and how much?
right. Well, and the
Yes.
financial
Yes.
policy work group is looking at just
That would be nice.
certain debt levels, but we need a whole strategic plan on really how you're going to look at financing stuff like this,
Yep.
beyond what
We
you're
haven't
going to
done it.
sell.
We didn't do this one.
I just observed that only 3 out of the 5 new schools we built in the last 20 years actually came with state
I know.
support. We decided to go ahead and do 2 of them flat
Yep.
out on our own.
Which one, middle school and Willard?
Middle and
Willard
Willard.
in the middle school.
Yep.
So
So sometimes we make the decision to just do it. We are expecting a report from the RT Tax Committee.
Yes,
Yep.
we're going to have that, yes, probably in April. We'll follow up on
All
that.
right.
good.
Organizational capacity. So I know that the Personnel Board is actually regularly reviewing these numbers, and they are developing a dashboard of sorts. They're also updating that with the new Munis-based system to make that more efficient, but they have been focused on this, and I'm not sure there's a trend, but we could ask them for a view of that. I could bring it
I've
back at a
seen it,
future
yeah.
meeting. So the Personnel Board has been working on that one, as well as the hire, and they've also been focused on how long open positions are open.
Yeah,
So there's some good data in that. And I've maintained that I think that the Personnel Board is kind of the right place for that. I'm not
Yep,
sure that we have
absolutely.
time to
Yep.
delve into that ourselves.
Yep.
Committee processes. Fully staffing committees and reorganize as needed.
we've revised charters, and the West Concord Advisory Committee is
I mean-
rethinking itself.
Well,
Yeah.
several are.
Yeah, yeah.
They're sunsetting?
No, the West Concord Advisory
West
Committee
Concord
is trying to
Advisory.
evaluate what their goals should be and how they're supporting
TAC
other
is as well.
I think
committees.
it's a work in progress.
TAC, yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm just saying that progress is happening, yeah,
But
Okay,
even some, like, Mark, what you talked about at the start of the meeting around MCI and,
yeah.
right.
you know, how we're.
Yeah, and we did do APP 10, so.
Yep.
Okay.
The town
Um,
clerk's office
Has
has a
conducted the
four-part
The training,
series.
Training, yeah.
the training's going really well.
Okay,
We've done topical forums.
all right.
We did housing, we did eggs, economic vitality, all did topical forums.
I believe Shannon sent something
Yeah, we just
to
got a
all of
report,
us today.
which has a
that
really
says
nice
we've got
section
a
on lessons learned.
250th.
Oh, yeah.
That's a nice section.
Quarterly discussions with the school committee, that was a suggestion tonight, so maybe we should have at least one of those.
Yes.
Okay. And actually, that facilities topic is probably a good topic to have. Not that we haven't been in touch with the school committee this year.
Yeah.
And how are we feeling about our communications?
I'm not sure it's something we can answer. We have to
Yeah, I
ask others
That's
how we're
right, that's right, how we
communicating.
communicate.
Lots of people are communicating with us.
We have the bridge.
No.
And as
Well,
far
there's
as
committees
publishing
also.
correspondence and,
We respond to correspondence.
Yes.
no, but also like publishing the, the letters and stuff like, I feel like
We have, our minutes are up to date.
yeah.
Yeah, they are, for sure.
Yeah, the question is what
We
kind
do
of
public
communications?
comment.
I mean, Carrie's over the last
Carrie's
year,
done a
the
great job.
communications from the
Yep.
town that
Yep.
we've gotten, between
This
the
was select.
podcasts and your reports have
Podcasts,
gotten
Yeah.
order of
A lot.
magnitude greater.
Okay.
Okay, good, that's good.
Sustainability in Ecology, the Warner's Plan Management Committee was seated this past week.
Oh, was it?
It was?
Yeah.
It was,
I'm not sure
Okay.
when their first meeting is,
but
but,
I don't know either.
but the NRC did move on that. Middle school solar construction, we know has not
Well,
progressed.
just back, the funding for that is actually,
Which,
the DNR already has funding through previous CPC funding.
oh, they do? Okay, I was wondering about that.
There was
Is it
one fund
appropriately?
improvement, independent of dredging, that still is unspent. So my
Oh, okay.
understanding that's going to be used.
It's sufficient?
Well, the committee hasn't decided exactly what they need yet,
Oh,
so
okay.
theoretically, some of that funding would come out of,
Okay, good.
it's already allocated from
But
CPC.
the sort of pro forma that was associated with the recommendation coming out of the task force was certainly, was within what was available,
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Good.
so.
Okay, solar's not done.
Solar's not done. There is a middle school did sign the site,
Right, so this,
They did?
yes.
So,
right.
and I really should know this, but my understanding was, there was something that was in the bridge.
It's the roof.
And so it talked about penetrations in the roof, but my understanding was that the design was not really to penetrate the roof at all.
Right,
Because it was essentially roof panels that sit on
on
the
top,
roof
right.
and are weighted down with what amounts to be cinder blocks, not,
So maybe Jason can give us the
Yeah, I
update
don't
at our
know.
next
I
mean.
don't know all the details
Right.
of the solar itself. Because
Yeah.
obviously there's the solar
yeah,
on the roof.
Right.
right,
There's the canopies,
yeah,
which is another potential
yeah.
Right,
piece. And if you do the canopies, there's also a battery.
right. But right now, we're just
But-
talking the roof.
But those can,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
solar on the roof can be done as its own standalone.
Right, and that was the plan.
Ken?
It can be done.
Yeah.
It doesn't have, like, the canopies and the battery do not have to be part of it. It
Right,
could be
right.
just the solar
No.
on the roof. It could be including also the canopies and the
All
battery.
right.
So,
Yeah, what
so
I was,
there's, Jason should give the
what I was
fuller
expressing
sort of update.
confusion
This is
about
another
was
question.
the reports that somehow
Yes.
or another, the roof warranty was going to be voided by putting.
Oh,
That's
that-
what, no,
that-
no, no, that was discussed at the school committee, so
That-
I think that
that
needs to be
doesn't-
clarified.
Yes.
Right,
Doesn't match with my understanding of
right.
of
Well,
it.
my question
Thank
more on governance, this may be a question for the schools, because the CMLP and the schools in alignment on this project, because they haven't been, are they aligned now? Right, in terms of interests, how it's going to proceed? I think the documents are in place. The budget is not in, the RFP went out, the budget's out of whack, so there's a financial headwind right now. But I'm not sure, is there an institutional headwind on this?
The school committee says they want to move forward.
So we've already got two items
Right.
on our agenda for a joint meeting with the
I don't
school.
want to-
Right.
Well, I don't know, it's a question you can't answer.
Yeah.
Well, but
All right.
Jason will give us an update.
Good,
Another item we should,
okay, we should talk
Okay.
to them.
Okay.
Okay. Time
Um,
of use billing,
Time
April
of day.
1st.
yeah, so the
Yes.
bidirectional power flow is, Jason's continuing to meet on that, so that's pushing energy back, working with Eversource.
I think that's the end of December, end of 26, right?
I know it's,
Oh, so it's on track?
Yeah, I
it's in
mean,
process. I mean, they're continuing discussions. I
Okay,
mean,
in
exactly
process, in
when and how it's
process.
going to
Okay.
happen, I'm not going
yeah.
to.
Okay.
Well, that's
okay,
what Jason told me when we set this goal.
Yeah,
I'm
but
like,
it
is it
is-
really going to be done?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Work is happening.
Right.
And obviously, the time of use for April.
Yeah.
Yep, April 1. Climate action, do we have?
And the climate action,
Plan
they
is-
are moving.
It was
ahead
just
with-
kicked off. The plan's going to take a year, so this will bleed into
The
27.
next year,
Yeah,
when it started.
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 Will this have, I mean, it says here, next one is evaluate new organizational effectiveness. What did we mean by that?
I did, because remember, so we had, yes, we had, we reduced an FTE to manage this, and I would say that,
Resilience,
to Megan's credit, the team's doing a great
Right.
job.
So just
Everything's positive right now.
it being managed in
Yes.
the current,
Got it.
Yeah.
There was a lot of concern that it wouldn't be
Okay,
initially,
good.
Okay.
making sure it doesn't get lost, that's all.
and I'd
So
say it's
we're
on track.
developing a new plan.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Civility, tolerance, and inclusion. Review and improve
Incidents.
reporting and communications around incidents. So we started
In
the whole
process.
task force,
Mhm.
unified approach. We have been in a lot of conversation with the
Yep.
school committee about how to handle these things together. And there's a Concord United meeting that was supposed to happen on the snow day, but it's being rescheduled. I've forgotten exactly
I
what the
think
date is.
it's next Monday.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And promote a community dialogue. Well, we're certainly
I think
having
we've done
dialogue.
that.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay,
Just
right.
that
comment
got
on-
us to the end of that.
Just comment on that. So I think we have done, and you have done a great job on this.
Yeah.
I still sense that a lot of our public comments at meeting are still lacking in civility.
Really?
We saw that at what, select board meeting,
Yeah. let's-
we might have heard borderline comments tonight that stepped over the line. So I think we have some public education on this. That we keep reinforcing it, I think that's good. I think we have to keep on it and perhaps even call it out when it occurs. Enough said on that.
Okay.
Okay, did that get
So
us through
let's-
the goal review, or?
Yeah, well, that got us through hours.
Oh, my
I would like
gosh.
to hear, what Carrie wants to say about hers.
Well, so what I would like to say is my goals for fiscal '26 were largely influenced by what did not get completed in fiscal '25, mostly because of the 250th. So mine is in the format that you saw in fiscal '25. We have another presentation included in the packet this evening. So the direction that was provided to all other non-union staff was to take the select board goals and to build individual goals off of those goals. So I don't know if it makes sense to do a quick run-through of that presentation, because it's formatted on what you were just talking about, and then I can take a few minutes on my goals, and then we can talk about 27.
Okay.
So Jess, if Jess is still here, yeah.
Just kidding.
So Kristen, if you could cue up that presentation.
Excellent. Good evening, Jess Porter, Assistant Town Manager and HR Director. So presenting to you just the update on where we stand with employee goal setting. So next slide, Kristen. So the employees have submitted into our goal tracker 342 goals. That's 171 participants total, essentially 2 goals per person. This is for the non-union staff. This does not include any unionized staff. Next slide. So the goals were developed and were requested that they fit into one of the select board category buckets. So as you can see there, the 6 different, well, actually it's 5 different buckets, and then we also added the category for organizational resilience. We had definitely, in the feedback we received, we had some employees that felt like their work was more kind of statutorial in nature, didn't necessarily fit to a specific goal, but it was still things that were important to the overall work of the town, so we did create this organizational resilience bucket. So on the slide there, you'll see that there was 9 goals that fell in the civility, tolerance, and inclusion category. We had 19 for development and land use, 78 goals for effective and transparent governance, 45 in the area of fiscal management, 165 in that organizational resilience bucket, and then there was a total of 26 goals in the area of sustainability and ecology. The next slide shows you a snapshot of the goals by department and where they fell. So I won't go through this in super detail, but you can see there the color coordination to the different goal buckets and the numbers of goals by department. So we thought this was a good way to illustrate where each department and division's goals fell within those bucket categories.
Jess, can I just ask a quick question? I was struck by how many goals there are for some departments, and I was kind of curious, like even CPW, so that's like, it's got to be like 70 or 80 there. Do the departments themselves set goals for the team?
So some departments do have kind of departmental goals
Yeah.
that loosely or sometimes solidly align with kind of the select board categories.
Okay.
But the goal was that all of the individual employee goals would somehow tie to one of the buckets.
Okay.
But in that framework, some departments did decide to kind of have collective department
okay.
project goals as well within the team outside of this. But then each of the individual goals that the staff set did roll up to
Yeah.
that greater picture.
I was just struck by there being so many that would be so different.
Yeah, and then, of course, I
sense.
mean,
It's
Public
people,
Works
too.
is one of the biggest departments, so that's why they have so many goals, because they have so many people.
And with a lot of
It's two.
non-union staff.
Yeah.
Yes, non-union.
Yeah.
Unusual, we don't have a fully unionized Public Works department.
Then we did a further breakdown. There was a checkbox as folks were putting in their goals to identify if the goal was something that was an initiative that would have an impact on cost savings or overall operational efficiencies, which of course could have an effect of being a cost savings as well. So approximately 25% or 86 goals had some sort of a cost savings or operational efficiency. So we thought that was important to point that out to everybody. Next slide, please. The common goal theme areas were the 4 categories here that most people seem to have goals that fell in these areas: professional development and skills enhancement, public engagement and education to increase transparency and get further information out to the public, internal knowledge sharing and process improvement. Again, this is kind of in theme with our leadership management team meetings that we have monthly in terms of developing some standard procedures, delivering internal trainings, and sharing knowledge across departments, which of course increases efficiency and service provided to the public. And then community relationship building was another one of the large goal theme buckets. On the cost savings and operational efficiency, here is just a sampling of some of the goals that are in the tracker from employees that support cost savings and operational efficiency. Transition to LED lighting, school use policy, which actually ties into the earlier discussion regarding the pilot. This is a way to try to capture, at least determine what some of the private schools are utilizing for our recreation resources that they are currently not directly submitting a cost for. Fee reviews and mobile plan management, getting everything consolidated with an IT for phone accounts, et cetera. So these are some of the examples of some cost savings goals. Some of the activities, so again, the goals everybody had to enter were SMART goals. So these are some examples on the next couple of slides, some of the goals people put in and how they plan to address that measurable goal. So facilitating public forums on time of day rate structure was a goal from somebody at CMLP. Purpose of getting, again, transparency, education out to the public, outlines the steps that will be followed. Developing and delivering recruitment training for interview panel staff. That was a goal from someone in the HR department, obviously, to work on getting things consistent across the board and making sure everybody has a solid understanding of how to approach being on an interview panel. And engaging in professional development with, for municipal technology leadership. So again, this is expanding technology knowledge and educating across the board through professional events. So the next steps, we actually just kicked off today our formal goal process check-in. So as part of our plan, departments, employees will be meeting with their supervisors for a check-in to see where they are at with their goals, if they are on track to meet the goals, if there's any adjustments that maybe need to be made to the goals, perhaps because of something beyond the control of the employee that the goal may or may not be able to be accomplished timely. We get that information updated in the tracker. We can then run some reports and give the town manager a sense of, how people are doing across the board on their goals. Some people, I'm assuming, are already going to have some goals that maybe they've already completed. Some are, either 25%, 50%, or 75% accomplished. And then we'll do another check-in in May. And then there'll be one final review in June, at which time we take the final tally of where people were at with their goals. And then we'll use that information to calculate whatever incentive payment they will receive later in the summer.
Great.
Good.
Are there any questions, comments?
You just answered my question.
Well, I think alignment of goals between the select board and is really important, using the same categories and language. So I think that's really important. Can you describe again what organizational resilience is? And because maybe if we had to actually factor that into the other goal, how do you define that?
I didn't pull the specific definition from me, but Carrie, if you want to.
I know we do have some written materials on that. For me, this is really about succession planning and onboarding new employees. We've had a lot of turnover, and making sure that processes and procedures are documented, that they're updated, that employees are receiving the training that they need, that there is consistent customer service, consistent understanding of expectations. I think that's why you're seeing a lot of goals there, just because of the turnover in the organization.
I'm looking back at the select board goals and seeing how they could have aligned, because we have staffing.
I thought about the same thing,
Yeah.
too, and when I think of it as part of effective governance, you're talking about operational excellence is really what you're sort of
Right.
focused on there. I thought it sort of felt in that.
We can, assuming that you're going to keep the same
Well, that's where I was going to go next.
categories,
but yeah, right.
we certainly can
Yeah,
roll that organizational
Yeah, I think
resilience
alignment
in.
would be better. I'm just,
Yes.
I think a lot of it could be redefined in different categories without
Yeah.
forcing it, but some of it is quite different.
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like to get to a point where we can have the level of detail, so, these subcategories, so that employees can know what these subcategories are and can identify specific goals related to, your numbers instead of your letters in this format. But that means having the select board adopt its goals very early in the year.
Yep.
But, Carrie, we've talked about this, and the whole, having the conversation now that the budget's done, is good. If your point is the categories, I think, are really helpful, and maybe instead of talking about the 27 goals, maybe at the next meeting, we can talk about those categories of goals, and just at least start there, and then, I've been taking notes of what people said we should do for 27, and then we can have some offline conversations about what people think about 27, but the whole timeline for setting the 27 goals, maybe we can just have a little more discussion about that
I think
separately.
as Organizational excellence, it should be a common goal.
Yes.
Right, for everybody, yeah, no, absolutely, that's what I think it is,
We defined it differently.
yeah.
Yeah, I think we baked it into some of these other areas and
It's a little bit,
be pulled out.
yeah.
Okay. Well, that's
Right.
helpful. All right.
Yeah, it looks like good progress.
Yeah.
It's a lot of
Right,
progress,
I
it's
mean-
great.
Looks like
It's
we
a
can-
relatively new process.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Second year, we
You're
did
always
do a,
walking the line of like not having people just describe their jobs for you,
Right.
right? And say like, oh, I'm going to go to a
Yeah.
training. Oh, well, okay, that's
Yeah.
nice. Well, don't you do that every year? So you want to keep pushing them to think about, hey, what's going to improve their own skills, improve their department,
yeah.
improve, you know,
Right.
their whatever, the customer service, the taxpayers, all that stuff, right?
Customer service.
Yeah, and keep sort of thinking about it from that mindset, but, I mean, you gotta start at the start, and this is
Yeah.
a good structure for it.
In the one example of the IT training, you can see it's identified, what are you bringing back to the organization
right.
from
That's what
that
you
training?
just gotta keep, it's like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's, because some of it can't be formulaic, it has to be a culture and a
Yes.
mindset of like,
Yeah.
just asking
Right.
those, people then start to ask themselves that question, hey, if I'm gonna go in and describe this goal, how am I going to articulate how it's
Smart.
going to make, you know, our department better, our town better, our, you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
And you just start to keep, you know, building that kind of culture.
You know, as you go forward, my experience with some of these goal setting is also, I ask the question about departments because quite often departments do set sort of goals that are within the corporate goals or the
Right.
select board goals, so it's just something to think about, so.
I think it
Just
was in
consideration.
the email that,
Yeah.
where you first sent us this table of goals. You also mentioned, you know, quantitatively, which ones were completed, which
Right.
ones were in progress and looked like they were on track, and which ones were at risk, and quantified that. And it looks to me like, based on the next steps that Justice showed us, there's sort of two windows where we could, at the beginning of March and the beginning of June, get some sense of, out of these 371, whatever it was, goals, what percentage of them are in those three buckets as well?
Yeah, we can do
Okay,
that.
so we don't need a full presentation on it, maybe just a mention in the town manager's report at one of those meetings
Yeah.
would be helpful, and I think that's, you know, that's a good thing to expect, and I think it's a reasonable, you know, and if there's any particular ones that seem to be really, the fact that they're at risk seems to be a problem, and that we can help with that, then certainly bring those forward, but other than that, we'll assume that that's just how you're doing.
Yeah.
And then just as you go into '27, when do you start setting those goals? Is it July, or are you starting the process in June?
We'll probably start at August, September-ish.
Okay, so it's a
Again, we
little
can
later.
start earlier,
Okay.
you know, basically once the select board goals are set,
Okay,
we can get
okay.
going. But kind of the way we have it set up now is we'll do our annual performance reviews during the month
Yep.
of May. Assuming successful performance, people will move a step, you know, because we have the big 18-step pay plan. Then we'll review the goals, determine, you know, what we're going to be giving, flat dollars, percent, whatever it is this year. And we'll go through that process, get all those awarded. I believe we're committed to paying those out no later than August 31st. And then conversely, we'll get going on the goal setting. We have been encouraging people, like even this last time, to start thinking about the
Right.
goals. Once you get past your review, like, you know
That
it's
was- I
coming.
was thinking.
This year, we did a whole survey to the employees as well, like how did the goal-setting process go? You know, what worked, what didn't? We got some really good feedback, and the result is we did make a lot of tweaks and changes to this. I feel like the goal setting actually went a little bit smoother this year, because I think it was more simplified for people to understand. And, you know, last year, one of the feedbacks we got was that people were kind of stressed, because they're like, well, I don't know how what I do ties to this goal way up here at the
Yeah,
select board
makes
level, when I'm way down here as, you know, whatever, a building custodian or an admin or even a division head. How does that roll out? So I expect we'll probably do another survey again after this year, just to see where things go. But, you know, over the next couple of years, it'll probably evolve somewhat until we have a really fine-tuned process. But it's come a long way just in the 1 year.
Great.
Good.
Nice job.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Carrie, is there more you
Okay.
wanted to cover about the
So, you know, just a couple of minutes on town manager goals. So there are 14 goals. At this time, I marked 5 of them as completed, and by completed, I mean completed and ready to just flow into day-to-day work.
Great.
Right? So not completed and never going to do it again, but completed enough so it doesn't need to be called out as a specific goal. There are 5 that are on target, and then I identified 4 at risk. And what I meant by at risk really is either at risk for being completed in the fiscal year, or at risk because there are a lot of external dependencies. And so the 2 that come to mind, the work that we're doing on the MWRA, the long-term water planning, where we're working with a group of communities. The town of Maynard is the lead community. contracting with a vendor who is helping us through that process. So something that's not going to be completed, that work is not going to be completed in fiscal '26. And it's, I think, moving a little bit slower than we had expected, and we're relying on a partner to help us move that forward. That really is not, it's not really an annual goal, it's really a strategic goal, and we'll figure out how to address that. And then the other is the CMLP governance, which I think we have a lot more control over, but it has been slow-moving, for a number of reasons, including that the CMLP administration has been involved in a lot of big initiatives, and this is something that has required a lot of legal
I was
work.
gonna say, it's an ambiguous
And-
legal, you can
Yeah.
ask two lawyers and get three different answers.
Yeah, so we are working with two different lawyers. We're working with a representative from Town Council's office, and we're working with an attorney that CMLP is using. So the light plant has a different legal counsel, and we're trying to work through those issues. This is a long-standing issue. It's been, 20, 25, 30, 35 years. I think the good news is the group is really committed to solving or coming up with a recommendation, and we made a lot of progress at the last meeting, and I think we will have a recommendation. I'm not sure, or I guess I would hope that we have a recommendation by the end of the fiscal year, but the recommendation is going to have steps
That could
that
include
can't
town
be,
meeting.
yeah, that could include town meeting or
Could.
more.
So,
Yeah.
there's parts of it that.
And so that's why I identified that as at risk. The other one that I identified as in process and at risk is number 12, and this has to do with taking our existing comp plan and creating a system that recognizes growth in position. So what I'm meaning, you heard Stephen Johnson talk earlier about, it's important to employees to have a career path. We have a lot of places where maybe the career path is somewhat limited, but we feel that there's an opportunity to create growth and recognize growth in positions. We have a couple of pilot plans that I think we're ready to implement, or we could implement, but we have not implemented. Some of that work I think we can do internally, some I think we can do in conjunction with the Personnel Board, and some of it probably requires some town meeting action. We don't have anything related to this in front of town meeting in 2026. So that's, I'm happy to answer questions. I'm sensing we've spent a lot of time on goals tonight.
It's
No, it's a good
it's
update.
worthwhile to take the
a good
checkpoint while
update.
we're still at a point in the year where
Yeah.
we need some correction or some new.
Well, and it's
energy. I
highlighted a
think-
couple of places where,
We saw
we have
that.
to still think about,
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
how we can make progress.
right. Okay, good.
Great.
I'm looking to wrap things up. I do not have a lot or anything really tonight on anti-Semitism or bias initiatives. I don't know if there's anything that anybody particularly wants to mention. We had a lot of energy around last week's meeting for that, and it's only been a week. I think, I did see that, we're starting to look at some forums in the DEI Commission, and I'm really hoping that we can move to the education and the community engagement portion of this and spend a little less time on the semantics.
I just, we made great progress. That proclamation, I think, was great, and it had general support, but not full support. And I think that I'm kind of disappointed that some people felt that there were winners and losers in that effort, and it's unfortunate. And I think I don't know what to do on it. There's misunderstandings in a lot of things, but one thing that should be clear is that the Select Board put together a proclamation and had no negative impact on free speech.
Right.
So the free speech part of that,
it's very
although
clear.
other people may have used definitions elsewhere in the country and the world as a weapon, it was not our intention, obviously, and you went out of your way in the proclamation to state that. So I think we have to enforce that, free speech is alive and well in Concord. And just, just kind of leave it at that. Just disappointing that people felt that somehow we killed free speech, which wasn't the case at all.
Agreed.
Of course not. And, I do think that we can do well if we focus on what kinds of things the community needs, what kinds of things actually are happening here. And we are, open to hear what people have to say, and I don't think I certainly know we're not in the business of restricting people's civil expression of their opinions and views. Okay. Does anybody have any comments or questions about liaison reports or anything that they wanted to bring to the table that's happened since they, I already mentioned mine, which was that the Warner's Pond Management Committee has been appointed by the NRC. It's the only note I had late last week. Okay. Are we ready to adjourn?
We're ready to adjourn.
We are.
Move to adjourn?
So moved.
Aye. Or second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.